Today's show is brought to you by Genshin Impact, an open-world action role-playing game that's cross-platform, so you can play it on PC, iOS, Android, and PlayStation. Genshin Impact won Best Game of 2020, both on Apple's App Store and Google Play. Everything begins in a fantasy land named Teyvat, where the Chosen Ones have been granted visions by the Archons and become able to wield the power of the seven elements. You, a mysterious traveler, are about to embark on an epic adventure in this free world, where amazing friends with various abilities will join you along the way. Genshin Impact recently released its 1.5 update with a brand new 5-star character, Eula, the so-called Dance of the Shimmering Wave. Thanks so much to Genshin Impact for sponsoring this show. Download it now to unlock the vast magical world of Teyvat.
Welcome, everybody. Another spectacular episode of the Game Informer Show is about to be in your ears. I'm your host, Benjamin Reeves. This is, as I said, the Game Informer Show, the show where we like to inform you about games. I'm joined by an eclectic crew today. I've got Alex Stadnick in the booth.
Spectres, where you at? We out here now. Let's go.
That's right. And the Spectres themselves, Leanna Rupert.
That is dope. I always wanted to be a Spectre. Repping that Mass Effect pride, man.
And Kimberly Wallace. How's it going?
Kim Shep is in the building.
Kim Shep.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is, of course, a podcast, so we should get that potty talk going. You guys ready to do some potty talk?
Let's talk potties.
Only always.
We have a good show. We have later in this episode, at the end of the show, we're going to kick it off with some Mass Effect here in a minute, but then at the end of the show, we'll close it off with some Mass Effect because we have an interview with Jennifer Hale and Courtenay Taylor, voice actors you might probably remember from a lot of things. Jen Hale's obviously been in Ash from Overwatch. She was Naomi Hunter. I stumble over that name every time. Naomi Hunter from Metal Gear Solid franchise, and of course, Commander Shepard from Mass Effect. Courtenay Taylor, you may know from Fallout 4. She was the main protagonist in that game, but we were most excited to talk to her about her work as Jack from the Mass Effect franchise. Remember that? Tough girl herself.
Do.
So that was a good conversation. We talked a little bit as well. Jen talked a little bit about doing some improv VO recordings during the recording process for BioShock Infinite, which I thought was pretty interesting, but most of it's Mass Effect related. And Leanna, you were actually there for that. Anything you want to tease? Any reason people should stick around for that interview?
Yeah, it's good. We got the first part is pretty standard interview, but it got really real towards the end. Like, we talked about them cutting the Jack Femme romance. We talked about how much Courtenay and Jack are actually similar with their backgrounds. We opened up about a lot of stuff. We talked about Keitel from Destiny 2 because she also voiced that. Like, it's pretty good, guys. Even if you're not all about Mass Effect, it's a good one.
It's pretty good. If you don't like Mass Effect, please stick around. We're going to talk about our newest Game Informer cover, Psychonauts 2. We just announced that this week. And I think you should stick around. We're going to talk all about it, talk about our time talking to Tim Schafer and the crew. That's up in a bit, but enough preamble. Let's kick off the playlist. There's really one main game that the three of you guys have been playing this week, and that's Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Hey, it's not a remaster. It's not a remake. It's, what would you guys call it?
Beautiful.
Do you work for EA?
Nostalgic. Yeah.
It still falls in the remaster camp, I think.
It basically is a remaster, but
Yeah.
EA's being weird about it. But Kim, you reviewed it for us. What'd you think?
I thought I was really impressed by it, honestly. I wasn't sure what to think and how even, going back, I was like, I don't know how these games are going to hold up for me. And I think the biggest honor I can give to it is like, I was really scared about going back to Mass Effect 1. Like, I know that game hasn't aged well. I knew when I played it, it was rough around the edges, and Bioware had fixed so much, like with the Mako in particular, because like that freaking vehicle, that 6-wheeled vehicle of chaos, I hate. And I remembered going back to it, like how much you're actually in that Mako, and like I didn't want anything to do with it. And they fixed the steering on it. The gun, the aimings of the gun is so much better. I could actually target things this time around.
Sure.
And move and not fall to my death. And I found it a much more enjoyable experience, especially when you had the extra speed boost. But I mean, beyond that, like
Well, hold on.
every-
Before we dive deeper, I'm curious to back up a second. Like the Mako, what exactly did they change that makes it better? Because everybody complained about it. I remember it being fine, but I haven't touched that game in 10
So
years.
remember it was like
what's different?
But so many
slow.
people loved it too. Like the
Yeah,
community was
it's-
very divided about Mako.
It was a slow molasses thing to move, and you're in it for a long time, for long stretches. And so having the speed of it be quicker, the controls and the handling, like especially the steering on it, and even like I said, the better aiming of the guns, like everything that you can think of that for me that annoyed me, like I couldn't even control the damn thing. I remember at points like bringing friends in and being like, can you just get around this for me, because I'm tired of that. I flip my vehicle over and I just be like, gosh darn, like I just can't with it.
Gosh
And
darn.
I
that was
don't
the word
think
you
you
used.
said gosh darn.
Gosh darn
Yeah.
was exactly the word.
Oh,
But
Shucks.
I never flipped it this time. I know you can
Jumper
you
miner.
can still flip it if you get crazy. Let me tell you that. But I was much more into exploring because of that. Like I visited a lot of like planets just for the hell of it. I was reviewing it anyway, so I was like, might as well just do some extra activities. And I found myself taking on extra tasks that before, like I wanted to stay in that vehicle as little as possible. And this time I was like, oh, I'm taking these huge like sand giants down now and
Sure.
even
Sorry.
no, yeah, but
small fan.
but just, and then that also brings up the other big thing was like the upgrade to the visuals, right? So one obviously got the most because it needed them, and Bioware was trying to make everything feel more cohesive, so you could take a shepherd from 1, 2 to 3 and not have these huge leaps, right, in the visuals and the changes, but still they had the challenge of staying true. And I like looking at a character like Liara, who, as we know in the first game, me and Liana, she's so doe-eyed and just like, la, la. And then you meet her in the second game and she's,
I'll
kind of
play you with my mind.
yeah, turning into a BA. And you see if you go back, when you play 1, like her character model looks so much better, but it's still got that innocence to her. And then you go into 2 and you kind of see the progression of her character where she starts to get more, like I said, in that BA camp and looking tough and mighty, like she's like just seeing that confidence expressed in her.
When you
in her
say
facial
BA,
features.
you're referring to BA Baracus, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
I
Naturally.
try
wanna
to
make
get
sure
around
everybody's on the same
swearing
page.
on this podcast when I can. So
She's
I
a
feel like
badass. Let's just
BA
be honest about it. She's a badass.
I was gonna say it's badass.
You can't say words like bad. Come on.
But even like
bleep
on
those.
all the armors and textures of the clothes, those are all improved and better. And you see it from the first game onward. Like they paid attention to that stuff. For me, though, it really was the environments, especially in 1, and how they made those so much more fun to explore just by changing the look of them. Like you get into them and you're like, I don't remember this looking this great. Oh, it didn't ever look this great. But I mean, they added like particle effects and fog and just like little things that you think would make a difference with lighting, but really does make all these areas look much better.
One of the big like risks when anybody upgrades an environment is they take, especially something that's older. It's like this game is set in space and these are alien planets, and lower quality graphics sometimes add to that. Of like, oh, this looks really alien. Do you feel like that diminished the alien or otherness of some of these worlds by the fact that they upgraded the visuals, or did it just help?
So much better.
I think it helps. Liana can go into more detail on her thoughts on it too, but I just thought it helped. I thought all the alien stuff looked really good. The thing that looked weird with the upgrades, honestly, was some of the human stuff.
Ooh,
The human
yep.
faces, still are a little rough and not there, and you kind of feel the awkward mannerisms. The voices still don't sync to the mouths that well. The humans are a little rough to look at, but I felt like the alien species all look so good. All the like planets and everything so much better.
Especially the
do you feel
Turians. I feel like
yes.
the Turians looked the
And
best.
the way the light hit Tally's cowl,
Yep.
like
yes.
it was just like golden
Mm-hmm.
almost. Like it was so detailed that those little moments really just added to the immersion, because you found yourself captivated by these cutscenes in a way that they're already captivating, but now you have the detailing that like you don't even know the ways it's improved consciously. Like it's a subconscious improvement because you're just like totally engaged.
Mm.
And yeah, when you dive into it deeper is when you kind of really uncover why. But it's the devil in the details, man. The
But
smaller
also,
changes make the biggest
one
difference.
human did get better, in my opinion. Miranda, me and Liana talk about
She looks
her
gorgeous.
character model.
It's my girl.
Oh my god, lighting! Proof that lighting can make such a difference. I mean, they made her hair fuller, they fixed her makeup up, but she just looks, if you could do a comparison side by side, you can't ignore like how much better that character looks now.
I mean, it is true because I'm like a spitting image of Matthew McConaughey, but like the lighting in here just doesn't really show
See?
it. So
It's all about lighting.
it's all about lighting. Yeah, if you saw me in the right lighting. But yeah, I'm curious, Alex and Liana, what do you guys think of the game particularly? Like, does it still hold up? The gameplay still hold up? Obviously, it looks good.
Miss Rupert, I'll defer to you and then I can go.
Are you sure?
Hit it. Let's get it.
I'll keep mine brief because I was not the one that reviewed it. I was just support for the review. But one thing I really liked is I didn't realize how much because obviously the first game is the one that saw the most improvements. But I didn't really realize, and right before we started reviewing it too, or I was helping her with a review, I did do a dry run through the first Mass Effect vanilla because I play on PC, so I've been modding it for years. And when it was first announced, I was excited for everybody else, but I was like, I might pick it up, whatever. But just because I have
knew you were picking it up. Come on,
no, I knew about it.
Pick it up, whatever.
No, I didn't because I knew about it about a year and a half before it was announced, and the debrief I had, I was like, oh, that sounds really cool for newcomers. You're not telling me anything that I can't do with mods. And I have all of the DLC, so it's like for me, I was excited because I knew newcomers were coming in for a new generation. That's great, but for me, I didn't feel the pull. And then we had the first look at it, and then I was like, okay, I'm really intrigued. And then the more and more we kept hearing, and the more I kept seeing the excitement, that was when it started to pull me in. So when we were playing it, I was kind of documenting everything that was different from my vanilla, no mod, no improvements, whatever, and yeah, the lighting is great. I know a lot of people had concerns that it was overly saturated. There was too many particle effects. And while I can see the concern there, it really, these comparison videos you're seeing online don't do it justice because the way it was done with the smoke, with the fog, with the detailing in the snow, with the detailing in the rocks, that is something that you really get the full effect of when you're in the moment in the game. Especially on PC because I have a really good graphics setup. Obviously, the best way to play it is on PC spec-wise, and then Xbox, and then PlayStation. And for me, I didn't have a lot of the issues that some people had with the humans. I never had any of the audio issues, sync issues, which is nice because that would drive me up the wall.
Yep.
And one thing I did really enjoy too is we recently did a stream with one of the developers that actually worked on the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. And it was only then when I realized how different Mass Effect 3 got tweaked too, because Mass Effect 3 was already a pretty gorgeous game when it first came out. But the subtle details, it's not this overt, we're changing everything. It's very subtle. It's blurring effects here. It's a shine effect here. It's removing the shine so you don't have the greasy faces. And I think that was really important. And the gun mechanics too in the first game really bothered me. I love going sniper. I love going shoddy. And the first game really kind of punishes you for that in the vanilla. And they've changed that. They made it more in line with the gun mechanics of Mass Effect 2, which to me was a huge boon. And the DLC
I'd love to dive into that. I'd love to dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit more, just like gun mechanics specifically in one. Like, what is it specifically that feels different to you guys? Especially for people who haven't played it in like 15 years. It's like they don't remember why it wasn't good.
Yeah, when you did if you did the shotgun, especially in the first quarter, it was this big scope that you couldn't hone in at, so aiming was non-existent, and the recoil was so all over the place. And as somebody who loves, I like to go to a shooting range, and shotguns, they do have the kick. Like if you don't have it rooted, you're gonna screw yourself up. But it was too much of a kick. Like it wasn't controlled in a way that almost didn't feel like they meant to do it that way. And until you actually trained up the weapons, some of the weapons were downright unusable. Trying to use a sniper in the vanilla game in the first quarter was almost unbearable. They fixed that. It's much more easily trained. It's easier to upgrade them. You're not punished for just starting out the game, which I felt like the original did. And a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's definitely okay too. But I feel like they perfected it in a way that makes the gunplay satisfying, which is something that people loved. You know, one of the few things that people really talked about with Andromeda is how smooth the gunplay was. And I felt like the changes they made to Mass Effect 1, they did small UI tweaks and stuff, but they didn't completely overhaul it. They just made it better, which I think is important because despite the original mechanics, we all fell in love with Mass Effect 1 and the trilogy. And so to change it too much is at risk of changing the magic. And I think they did a really good job of balancing that.
Sure. Alex, I'd love to hear your take on it.
Definitely.
Because you're a big Mass Effect fan too.
Right there, baby. Right? And 7 for
right
life.
There.
I'm starting with Mass Effect 1 and playing that. I did some capture for 2 and 3. My playthrough of 1 is really illustrating to me, because this game came out in 2007 originally, so I was in 7th grade. It's illustrating to me how little I talked to some of these characters on like the outset, which is why I think I value 2 so much, is because that game is the one where I really dove into the relationships, right? Instantly found Ashley being a racist. I was like, there it is, boop, goodbye.
Didn't notice that before.
Yep.
You are the weakest link.
Like,
goodbye.
Yeah, like I never dove into the Citadel where she called like the aliens like animals or something like that. I was like, hachi machi. Okay, I get it now. So
she does get better though. I do want to say for the Ashley lovers, we're not dunking on you. She does get better, but it's rough in that
start,
first scene overlooked.
There are Ashley lovers.
Yeah, we can come to that later, right? But I think one of the main things that I look for in a remaster outside of something insane like Final Fantasy VII Remake is does this hit the nostalgia and the look in my head of this game, right? Because we all have distorted views of our memories of games, right? And this does. And this really feels like a 2007 game in some of the combat mechanics still. Like, cover is still annoying. Kim, I love you, but I still think the Mako is Duke City. I've had flipped it a couple of times and it's not as bad. You're right. But I still, like, if you're expecting a full...
It's not hell to drive. I tell you, Alex, it was hell for me to drive.
Back in the day.
You could sky like
thing.
Going up the mountains was my favorite thing to do, but I always in the original I used to flip all the time, and like now I can actually do it without backsliding and then getting stuck in a crater because that happened more times.
Hey, Alex, drive better.
Oh, all right. Is that how it is?
Or it could be. Maybe I become a better driver in games through these years. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's so hard, but I just remember that thing drove me like the rage.
Oh, you drove it.
Yeah.
I think that was the problem.
Yeah.
No, I can understand. Like, it's not perfect. And I think Alex brings up what I love what you said here is and I want to say this, you're not going to forget that you're playing older games here. Like it is clear that this is just a remaster, and some of these even the stuff that they fix, like with the shooting, it still plays like an old, like quasi shooter, you know.
Yeah.
With even I had to retrain my brain for how much I need cover, because when these games came out, it was like when Gears was really popular. Gears is still kind of popular.
It's still popular,
but like the cover shooter was like the big thing of get into cover. So I had to like retrain my brain of how much you actually need to be behind cover or you are dead. It took a while to just like remember that time. Period that we were in with how shooters were and what you need to do. And I feel like the same thing. I was a little afraid to go back because it's like this nostalgia. Am I just going to break it? Is like everything that I felt about these games just going to come apart. And there are things that like coming back, I'm like, oh, here and there. But for the most part, I'm like, this is still like, I had a freaking blast playing through these games again in a way that I didn't expect them even to hold up. I actually expected the opposite. I was like, I'm going to play these and I'm going to see all these flaws just come through. And, you know, it's really funny because as I was playing, I was like, this is why I liked Outer Worlds so much, because it basically took all the Mass Effect formula and it's there, right? Yeah. Like these games are still, if you like dialogue and character interactions, and you know, we don't get many sci-fi series actually, which is disappointing in video games. And it's just really interesting to learn about this world again. And as you said, see the stuff that maybe you didn't like connect with or you missed the first time around or just didn't notice. And you know, as Liana has told us, like her playthroughs have always been different. And even through here, I'm seeing scenes that I'm like, or having like different choices where I'm just like, I didn't realize that could happen, or I
Right.
didn't realize this
Cool with that
character
Yeah.
would be by
is,
putting this character in my party for this mission, they would say something here.
What's cool about that is actually the community manager for Bioware, Jay Ingram. He has played through the series a lot, and even he was like, "Wow, I just happened upon 2 new quests that I've never played." I think he's played like over 10 times, I think, and he was like, "Wow, I just found 2 new quests that I've never experienced before." And they also tweaked some lore
Sounds
stuff
like he
too,
just
like
sucks at the game.
nerd.
Get
Well, it's like
better.
the beauty is in the side quest, especially for Mass Effect 1, the beauty is in the side quest. If you don't do the side quest, you're missing a lot of content and
For sure.
content that is pertinent later in the games. But they
And
just
good
did
content. Like before Mass Effect, I remember side quests were just like, oh, here, go collect 10 of these.
Yeah,
go
it's
kill
not like
20
that.
Schlarplets or whatever they
Those
are.
damn
And
schlarplets.
with Mass Effect, it was kind of like The Witcher. Like the reason I like The Witcher so much was
Mhm.
like all the side content had narrative around it, and like Mass Effect was a very similar situation.
Andromeda was like that too. You get to meet Zaid's son, who
Yeah.
is a but you won't meet him if you don't do the side quest. But they even did one thing that I do really like in the remaster is there was one side quest where it's a very side quest. Like if you're not exploring the planets and doing the scans, you're not going to find it. And it didn't make sense with the lore because the character, you find out that he was a pirate. He led an invasive attack on a human colony, and his name is Turian in origin. And keep in mind, you got the first contact war where humans and Turians literally went toe to toe to kill each other. Very vicious, very malicious. Towing the line of are we good with aliens or are we not is still very fresh in the first start of the trilogy. And so for him to be like all Turian and all but species was weird. And I remember there was a lot of talk about that in the original of like, I don't feel like this should have been a human. Like, this doesn't feel right. Why would other alien races rally behind a human to attack a human colony? And there was also theories that like, oh, he just took the name to hide his identity, or it actually is a Turian, but the VI is meant to look like a human to guard his existence. No, it was a glitch. And they actually changed it now. So if you go and do that mission now in the first Mass Effect, when you get that hologram, it's a Turian, which makes more sense.
There you go.
Yay!
There you
Little
go.
upgrades like that. That's
Bioware.
neat that they did that. I know we've talked a lot under the lens of, people who've probably played the games before coming back, but for newcomers, like people who haven't played this game before, like these are classic games. Why should they experience this for the first time? Like, what's the pitch there?
Because you're still getting some of the best relationship building in games in these, especially like in Mass Effect 1, as I'm relearning, right? I'm learning that this wasn't my first time through Mass Effect 1 wasn't a complete experience. And now with the DLC, with everything, you are getting this full picture of, I think, one of the most laid out, thought out sci-fi universes we have in video games for sure, and maybe even the larger scope. Like this feels like Lucas and how much it's thought out, you know what I mean? And in depth and thoughtful too, right? Like how all these races connect with each other. And I guess for the people who are just starting out in this, I would say like we talked about, there is some jank in Mass Effect 1, but the second you start to, like literally 10 minutes into it, you can see how they improve. And I think 2 and 3 still hold up as like pretty like sizable and enjoyable third-person shooters. So that's my pitch.
The first one is world building, and I think it's important to remember that. Like the first one's main purpose was not necessarily the story, even though that's obviously a huge component. But the main objective was to world build, and you don't really see the full effect of that until 2 and 3. And it references so many things in the first game. We actually have an article about it on the website of why you should play Legendary Mass Effect Edition or Mass Effect Legendary Edition. But this is the best pitch I can give, short and sweet, is it's a sci-fi game for those that don't like sci-fi. There's a lot of people that, even though like Halo is amazing or Gears of War is amazing, they're turned off because they don't necessarily vibe with the sci-fi genre. And this game, honestly, I feel like it transcends its genre a little bit. There's a reason why 10 years later, the Mass Effect community is still one of the most active and engaging communities out there. And I have numbers to back that up. If I write before the Legendary Edition was announced, anytime we would write about a Mass Effect article, it was top of traffic. Like there's so many eyes on it because the community is so active. People want to talk about it, want to love each other, want to compare experiences. And so when you come into this, you're coming into community that's built on love because of the Bioware magic. That's why people are so protective of Bioware and are sad when people leave, because Bioware has a unique magic to its narrative design and its character design that transcends a normal gaming experience. These people feel like family. These people feel real. They feel tangible. The Normandy feels like home. And if you've never experienced it yet, like what Alex said, what Kim said, if you're not feeling the first Mass Effect, please just power through it, because I promise you, Mass Effect 2 is when the obsession hits.
Yeah.
Because they've perfected a lot of the issues in the first Mass Effect, and you're going to see the payoff so much, and you're going to see why this is one of the most lovely communities to be a part of.
Lovely.
It will make you believe in God.
It will make you believe in God.
It'll change your life
Period
forever.
Some God.
is God.
Your God.
I'll say
I won't say which one.
Yeah.
Kim, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your final thoughts. You reviewed it. Reviews on the site. What'd you give it?
a 9.
Awesome.
I will just say it like this. Going through it and seeing the evolutions from each game is just amazing. And this collection allows you to do that. Playing the games the way they are meant to be played with all the DLC, except Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which I'm bummed about, and Pinnacle Station, obviously they lost the source code. But to go all the way through this, think about the time we were in when where choice in games was, and BioWare to create a trilogy where your choices spanned across 3 games and kind of see where they totally knocked it out of the park. And then some places you're like, oh God, that was kind of disappointing what they did there. Or like, but it was an ambitious thing. It really did help, with where we are now with choice and consequences in game, and seeing like how much I think what's so great about the Mass Effect trilogy is how empowering it is to play as Commander Shepard, and how that endears you to the experience of having to make all these choices and sometimes not know what was the right one, or where's that going to come back to haunt me. And then seeing certain things from like 1 play back in 3, or even those moments of what's so great about this is you'll get to like play through 1, and then you'll go into 2 and you'll see it like a character from 1 that you really liked, and you're like, there's Tally. Like there is something about these characters that like you care about them. You are their commander, and I think it's a really interesting.
They better remember it.
Yeah, it's a great character. It's a great experience, and it's very memorable, and you owe it to yourself to at least try to go through it and see why people are so passionate about this series, and even see where it sometimes falters. I think there's a lot to talk about with it. Like, it's not perfect, but at the same time it did so much for, like, looking back. I was telling my fiance the other day, looking back on it, I'm like, I don't think, with my love for these characters and where they are, it's just such an important like part of my gaming history, and I couldn't imagine without having Mass Effect in there. Like, it's just that, essential to like shaping me as a gamer and having characters that I still look back on so damn fondly.
Yeah, for sure. Those are great thoughts. And before we go, Leanna, I know you've also written a few things for the site, some guides and stuff. Anything in particular you want to point people to?
Yes, I meant to have this up earlier, but I had technical difficulties and I lost it all. But I've got a tip, a common mistake that players make when playing the Mass Effect trilogy that is going up later today. I highly recommend checking that out. We also wrote why you should play the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. That also is written from an angle of if you're returning as well, because there's a lot of reasons to return to it, even if you played the original. Talking with a lot of people, I run a couple of different communities, and a lot of people that have played the game even a couple times didn't even know Kasumi existed, didn't know about Zaid. They're missing pivotal points. So I would look at that. We have breakdowns on why you should go Paragon or Renegade. We have breakdowns of so much. If you're new, if you're returning, those are worth looking into, because that's going to help you kind of avoid some of the common mistakes that some of those mistakes can make you lose pivotal characters. We're talking about mainstay characters. Some of them die. One of them commits suicide if you don't make the right choices. Like, there's so many profound consequences that are so easily avoidable because people just didn't know they were supposed to do something. The game gives a lot of freedom, but one critique I do have of it is it doesn't do enough of a job of kind of coercing people into the path they need to take. There's the audio cues of like, hey, I think Ashley should be on this mission, or hey, but I feel like it's done so casually that a lot of people overlook it. So yeah, I would recommend looking at that kind of stuff if you're just looking for some helpful tips.
Sure. Great. All right, let's take a break and we'll be right back. And we're back. All right, we got rid of those nerds and it's got. Oh wait, Alex is still here.
Hey, I thought it was your nerd.
I mean, got rid of those awesome people. There's no way to make nerd into something complimentary, unfortunately. But we brought in some new nerds. We have Blake Hester.
Hello. Shout out to Derek.
Yeah. What's up, Derek? And we also have Dan Tack.
Hey, shout out to the D Squad.
Yeah.
Derek.
Derek's
baby.
D. Yeah, there we go.
Some days I feel like we are the D Squad. I worry about that.
Yeah.
We're just going to wrap up our playlist here. I know, Dan, you had a couple of games that sounded interesting you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, I sure do, Ben. Thanks for having me on. Let's just kick it off with one I think people are going to be interested in that hits very soon in July. This is one I had a chance to play a couple hours of, in this brave new world of game demos done remotely. The Ascent. This one is coming to Xbox platforms and PC in a couple months. It is a cyberpunky, Shadowrunny, Blade Runner-y action game. So it's isometric, like you'd be familiar with like the CRPG style, right? But it's an action game instead of being turn-based or anything like that. So I mean, that's not completely unheard of, but it's unusual today, I think, to run something like that. Very, very action-oriented. You've got like basically dodge iframes and windows, and you've got reload timers. No ammunition counter to worry about, but it takes a long time to reload a riot gun, for instance. So you've got to kind of play defense while you're sticking those shells back in and getting ready, because you die pretty quick if you're fighting over-leveled enemies. It's got leveling, system advancement, all that fun stuff.
But you seemed excited about it. You thought like it looked like pretty solid. Obviously, we haven't checked it out in full yet, but
So first impressions, this is very solidly one of those games in the AA space. This is there's going to be hitches with this one. I can almost guarantee it. There's going to be this is something I expect to have some bugs and some other issues, and it's not going to be squeaky clean or perfect, but it will probably be a lot of people's jam at the same time who are into this kind of thing. The 4-player co-op is something I really want to try out that I didn't get a chance to do in the demo. That seems like it could be really interesting. I mean, it could be catastrophic too, right? But that's something I want to check out.
Part of the fun.
That about anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems like to be very solid in that like summer AA jam to play while you're between games or something. Seems neat to kick it while with friends. Had a cool like augmentation system. Cyberpunk games are all about altering yourself, in different ways. I made like a fire punch on my dude. I could just, big mutant frog things coming after me, just smack him in the jaw, burn him, shoot him and then hide behind a crate while like 10 other rowdy dudes try to come after me. That's got that kind
Sounds
of vibe.
Like my prom night.
Mine too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was basically just reciting my prom night from memory there.
The theme was the Ascent.
I don't know where the Ascent comes in at all. I mean, it's about like...
Now, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a prequel to Neil Marshall's 2007 film, correct?
I have no idea about its association to any other product.
That's
pretty cool if that's true.
You can correct him, and he's wrong.
Okay. Well, I legitimately didn't know. I was like, oh, okay.
What that is. What we call a joke, Dan, but it's fine because it wasn't a very good one.
We got jokes.
Yeah, we got them.
So, let me know in the comments if that was a good one, guys.
But the game Ascent, it's coming out later this summer, right?
Yeah, July 29th, I believe, is the date. It again, I can see this one being a little rough around the edges, but again, a cool jam for folks looking for this kind of. It really did capture some of that old school SNES Shadowrun. I'm very much dating myself here, but it had that kind of vibe to it, and that's a vibe I like. So I enjoyed that aspect to it. It was pretty I died a lot, okay, but I was also fighting enemies that were like over leveled. I think this one is worth investigation and worthy of keeping on our radar as we continue through the summer, which I think is going to get overshadowed by all these big E3 announcements we got coming up, right? Hey,
fingers crossed. It's
Fingers crossed.
it's on Game Pass day one too, right?
Game Pass day one.
That's gonna help.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I know we don't evaluate stuff based on price or anything, but like as a Game Pass jaunt where you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to play today. Oh, you know what? I kind of like hanging out in Neo City after hours with the neon lights and, getting involved with the wrong crowd. That's what I'm going to do tonight, baby. There we go.
Stop talking about prom night.
I can't help myself. I got these memories.
That's not the only thing you checked out recently, right, Dan?
I've checked out a lot of things recently, Ben. And that's why I'm on the show today.
Speaking of checking out, sounds like my prom night.
Our repetition is the source of all comedy. We got it.
Sure.
And that's a prequel to the movie The Ascent 7 by Neil Marshall, right?
Why do we know under
Correct.
that D Squad?
I got
Repetition is the heart of comedy.
That's what I've been told.
But you played Phantasy Star Online. What's the subhead
That's
here?
right. So, God, this is confusing as all hell. So let's try to dial it down. Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, which is a new game, but it's also Phantasy Star Online 2. So it's not an expansion. It's a new game, but it's also it's a new Phantasy Star Online 2 game. Now, does this make any sense? It doesn't have to. This is a new Phantasy Star Online 2 experience that is coming out. I don't know the date, but this was a closed beta that was over the weekend. Basically, the tutorial area that let us get a taste of this. I had fun. It's an open world MMORPG kind of thing. Sort of new age MMO, but back then it was revolutionary. And the fact that you'll have maybe 32 players in a zone or 8 players in a zone. You'll team up to do bosses and events together. Sort of what we think of as Destiny style zone construct today. Where you're alone, you can play solo, you can have fun solo, but there's lots of stuff to do with other people randomly encountered throughout the world as well.
Sure. Now I played
futuristic mechs, anime. If any of these words sound good to you, this might be a good choice for you.
But you think this looks good, right? Like you're into this.
Well, I am into anime, mechs, and MMORPGs. So yeah, this thing's in my wheelhouse. Yeah.
That sounds
decidedly
awesome.
so.
I played the original Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast. Now I'm dating myself. Dating myself. Sounds like my prom night.
No! Damn it.
But I have not touched Phantasy Star Online in basically since it was on the Dreamcast.
Right.
If you're in my boat, is this a thing that I should pay attention to? I have fond memories of that old Phantasy Star Online game, but the world of MMOs has changed by leaps and bounds since then.
Yeah, but I actually think PSO1, I also played on the Dreamcast, Ben. I'm also dating myself. Sounds like my prom night. I'm also dating myself here. But yeah, that sort of, I think, was ahead of its time in sort of creating the sort of MMO space that we have today. Smaller scale, yet still open world. Yeah, I can see you totally liking this. Now, the demo was very downscaled in size and scope. So I can't tell if it's going to live up to the massive world that PSO2 had with a functioning casino and all this other crazy stuff in town. A very vibrant world, lots of stuff to do, tons of bosses. I expect this new Genesis thing will fall in line with that, but we don't really have any. Like I said, I got to kill the newbie boss and explore the newbie zone, which was fun. But that's it. The demo ended after that, essentially. But it leads me to believe, yes, I think you could enjoy this. It is not it is not an old school EverQuest or Dark Age of Camelot or World of Warcraft or any of that kind of thing, right? This is you want to play solo, go ahead, go out and farm enemies. It's an action-based experience. I was playing on a controller. I recommend doing that. It's fun. You can play it on a controller or keyboard, whatever. It's all good.
Phantasy Star Online 2.
New Genesis.
New Genesis. To be
Phantasy Star Online 2 regular has been out for, I think, over a decade at this point, or close to it, whatever. If I'm wrong by a year or two, forgive me. Comment section.
I'll try.
I love you.
Well, Dan,
right, yeah.
I'm glad you're here because I was more excited to talk about another game, a more recent game, Returnal, which you reviewed. We talked about a few weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
I finally got into it. I'll be honest with you. It didn't catch me at first. It's some of the runs, it's basically rogue light. There's a lot of progression in the game, but you do start runs over and over again. And some of the runs just felt a little long to me. It was a little bit of a slog. That second boss, I hit my head against him a little bit, and just the runs leading up to him just felt a little bit too long, I thought. But I appreciate that you only have to beat each boss once. And I
If
think
you
that's
want to.
well, you can go beat them again. Yes, you're correct. But you only have to, I feel like.
Now, yeah,
but
since
I'm
we're a
liking
few weeks in, yeah, okay.
I'm getting into it finally. It finally has started to click with me, and I'm really digging just like the core combat mechanics, and like I'm unlocking new weapons that I really like. And the world is slowly changing around me, I'm noticing. So it's got some interesting hooks that I'm really digging finally. So I really like the atmosphere.
I'm glad you stuck with it. That game is definitely a game of the year contender for me. I had an amazing time with that game. Now that we're like a few weeks in, I'm not going to drop any spoilers still, but I do want to say the fourth boss in that game is. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think that the fourth boss is probably one of the best bosses I've in the last decade.
Wow.
And I fight a lot of bosses.
Just as I was falling off the game, you say something like that, now I need to boot it back up.
Now, without getting too much into it, it's because of the way the fourth area and its respective boss are presented to the player. It forms a cohesive experience where you have a build up and a payoff.
Just like Dan's prom night.
You did it, not me.
I'm out.
Well, where do we go from there? Who knows? Yeah, I'm really liking Returnal, so I'm glad I stuck with it. It's got one of those like that thing that Dead Cells did, the thing that Hades did was like, I'll get frustrated with it because you lose a run, or you just you invest so much time in a certain run, you feel like you're doing well, and then in like a minute it's gone.
Yep.
Mhm.
And like, I'll drop the controller and be like, I'm done with this game forever. And then like, an hour later, I'm like, maybe I kind of want to play that again. And so it's got that element to it, which is good.
I
And
feel like I had a bit of an opposite experience with Returnal, where second to second when I was playing it, loved it. I think that game feels amazing, but roguelikes, lights, whatever you want to call them, are so antithetical to what I want to play when I sit down that it like really bums me out that I don't think I'll ever return to that game. I'll never return to that game.
Returnal? It's very good.
Yeah.
Well, I would
it's just like,
encourage you to try, Blake, because I just think there's more progression there than you probably
Sure.
think at first. And if you
well,
can
the
get
plot
over
twist. The plot twist of my story is I was banging my head against it, getting real frustrated, and the bullet hell stuff in it. I was like, I should replay Nier Automata, and so now I'm doing that instead.
So you're doing that instead.
What a game, I'll tell you.
Wait, did you play Nier Replicant?
No,
You're just going back to Automata. Okay,
look, a man knows what he likes, you know.
that's true. That's true.
And I tell you what I do like is the 2007 film The Descent.
Oh, what
The
game is
Ascent
that based
prequel
on?
to. Well, The Ascent is a prequel to it. You learn what came before.
Oh, perfect. I'll have to do
Actually,
that.
The Descent 2 was the prequel for that one, I believe.
Oh.
There's never a sequel. Don't lie to our audience.
There is. There is.
there? I guess
There
I'm the
totally
liar.
is.
Sorry, Derek.
We're disappointing you, Derek. We'll try harder next week. I am sorry. I'll get these bozos in line. But Blake,
What's up?
Nier Automata is not the only game you've been playing, right?
No, I've been playing Fortnite
No, great.
And-
That's what I thought you were going to talk about.
and Aerial Knights Never Yield, which I just
Oh.
reviewed for GameInformer.com and perhaps the magazine. We'll see how it goes in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, that game I feel like has been catching quite a bit of steam lately. It was included on the Nintendo Switch and Steam. They both had demos, and I've seen a lot of people tweeting about it and a lot of people like interviewing Aerial Knight. And I am here to say that for the most part, that game's worth it. Yeah, check it out. Like, especially if you're interested in it. I think the base gameplay, you can read about this in my review, it's not the most interesting thing.
It's basically an
in the
auto
world.
runner, right?
Yeah, it's an
Side
auto
scrolling
runner, and then
platformer.
each of the face buttons correspond with a different move. Like you have a little jump, then a high jump. You have like a dash or a sprint. I'm not exactly sure what the correct terminology for that is, and then a slide. And you do that across various obstacles in the world. On the normal difficulty, the game is an absolute breeze. I recommend bumping it up as soon as humanly possible to the harder difficulties. Because even though the campaign, as it were, is only like an hour and a half on normal difficulties, it's a little tedious after a while because there's just like no challenge from one level to the other. On the harder ones, far more engaging and far more compelling. But the thing I want to talk about specifically with this game is the soundtrack, which is out of control. It is so good. It is by an artist named Donima-sama, I believe. I don't know. And they do. So it's a cyberpunk game, which like cyberpunk almost always is some amalgamation of futurism and retro and different cultures. And the soundtrack kind of is similar in that it's amalgamating a bunch of different genres at once. So you have a lot of hip hop influence or kind of like synthwave, chillwave type stuff. And then it kind of will seamlessly flow into a more free-form jazz style throughout the level. So, you kind of have like the backing beat of, a drums or a beat sequencer. And then over it is this piano lead that sounds like it's fresh out of just like a noir film, And the way it like made me want to play more of the game was really surprising to me. I'm not someone very compelled by video game soundtracks. I don't find myself ever thinking much about them. But the reason I wanted to play more of Never Yield was like not really the game itself. It was to hear each new song. Because I think every level has a new song. So it's like 12 songs. It's like an album or so. And, some will have vocal tracks. Some will have a rapping part. The one that's probably the coolest is there's a guitar solo in a song. And it's represented actually in the level as you kind of have a fight with a guitarist who's creating physical manifestations of sound that you must then, slide or jump over as an obstacle. And I think it's one of the only times in the game the music is actually utilized in that way, in like an interactive way. But I recommend checking the game out solely for the soundtrack. I think it is worth it to see the game in motion with what it's doing with that soundtrack and kind of how it's gelling all that together. I especially once I bumped it up to the harder difficulties and that kind of overcame my issues with the gameplay a little bit. I had a great time with it. I recommend it a lot. I gave it a 7.5.
7.5. And the review's on the site, so you can read that if you want.
Yeah.
It reminds me slightly of Ape Out. Did you play that, Blake?
Ape Out, yes. That's I think a good comparison. It's not, as far as I understand, Ape Out, the music was procedurally generated as well as the levels. It's not quite as similar to that, but the way they play off each other is very similar. Where like I would not want to play Never Yield on mute. It's not a podcast game. If you heard me talk about Pac-Man 99 a few weeks ago, it is a game I want to hear. And Ape Out was very similar. Like I want to hear the way those drum tracks come in as I am, increasing through the level. Mm-hmm. I wish it kind of had more of that, flexibility that Ape Out had. It doesn't. It just seems to be a song that kind of loops as you go through a level. But regardless.
You should have led with that. Now I'm very interested. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know how much it is on Switch or other platforms. If I had to guess, it's probably not a full priced item. You can probably pick it up for pretty cheap, and I really would recommend it. I think, like, especially at an hour, at most hour and a half, like, super worth it. Cool game.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I loved Ape Out, so anything that gets that comparison, I'm game for.
Yeah.
Ape Out. Well,
so
underrated
good.
Game of the last 5 years.
So good.
Ape Out. What does that sound like?
I think it was actually in the same cinematic universe as the Descent.
We're out. I'm cutting the recording.
By Neil Marshall.
Ape Out sounds like my prom night. That brings us to the next segment of the show, a little segment we like to call a psychonautical journey with Game Informer. Guys,
unbelievably, we're going to do this every week, right? Because it is a segment now.
It's a recurring segment that we like to call Psychonautical Journey with Game Informer, where we talk about the newest cover on the Game Informer magazine, Psychonauts 2. Yes. Yeah, Alex and Blake, you joined me for this journey. Yeah. I wrote the cover, and Blake, you wrote a huge amount of supplemental material, basically a second cover story. We have
the way I've
magazine.
the way I've been talking about this one is there are 4 cover stories in it. You know, like because people like I think are picking it up like, oh, cool, I get to learn a little more about Psychonauts. It's like, nah, you're gonna learn the entire history of the company that made it, along with like some new material on this game you might be stoked for.
Yeah.
I'm really excited and proud of the work we did on that.
Yeah, it's a great looking cover. You can check it out on GameInformer.com. We have a bunch of material, GameInformer.com/Psychonauts2 if you want to read our supplemental stuff. Maybe let's just start with the game itself, Psychonauts 2. We talked to Tim Schafer and a bunch of the designers over there about the game, and they've been quiet for a couple years now, and it was fun to like go back and talk to them about stuff since the Microsoft acquisition, because Microsoft came in, they bought Double Fine a couple years ago, and that allowed them to invest more money in the project, and they'd like cut boss fights, for example. And so now they're bringing boss fights back into the game. And so we got to see a boss fight. Lady Luctopus is what it's called. It's this tentacle. Well, it's an octopus. So it's like a tentacle monster that is, slamming this casino, poker board, and you're running around this giant poker board, dodging its attacks. It was a cool little fight. So it's fun to see that in the game. I don't know, Blake, Alex, what did you guys think of the game overall?
That world is so interesting too, because like you're in Hollis Forsyth's mind, who's second in command at the Psychonauts, the organization of it, right? But it's also combined with a hospital. And I think it was just, they kind of gave us this taste of the weird directions they're going to go with this game, right? And how they're going to integrate those different themes together. This is one of my most anticipated for this year. There's such a joy in the combat, and having played the first game like this year, seeing those like upgrades they're making to traversal, to combat, is because I thought this first Psychonauts holds up decently today. There's the end level is almost unplayable, but like for the most part, I think that feels okay by today's standards. And
you just went back and played it this year, didn't you?
I did play it this year.
So take it from the man himself.
Right there. If I'm lying, I'm dying, folks. But that's not like like I said, they're making those upgrades to the gameplay, right? But it also feels like they're very aware story-wise of mental health in 2021, which I know Blake can speak to more, but it's like it feels like it's striking a nice balance between fun and joy in its presentation, right? But also not shying away from, some more serious topics like, everyone's debilitating mental health. And I think they're going to, everything we talked to them about, right, seems like they have a good grasp on it, and they're going to handle it in a fun, but not cautious way, but reverent way. Right. So,
yeah. We talked to a mental health expert who consulted on the project. I know, Blake, you have a feature online coming out that will be online later in the month. Do you want to speak to that?
That'll be out this week, day after you hear this on Thursday. It'll be out this Friday. I don't know. It was the mental health thing is, I feel like, something we talked about a lot without seeing too many concrete examples ourselves. So it's hard to say, if they're tackling X subject matter, man, they really knocked it out of the park, because we didn't exactly see that in depth on that stuff. But in talking to the mental health expert, it was kind of interesting to hear, what game companies or other media companies do wrong, and as well as how they don't use the resources available to them in the right way. And the flip side of that is how open and receptive Double Fine has been to including some of this stuff, because, just the simple act of inclusion, whether you're doing it right or wrong, is tricky, and it's a difficult thing to tackle. And B, that, when people were going back with when mental health experts were going back with suggestions, like Double Fine was very receptive to it and wanting to make sure they were doing a good job with that stuff, which we heard, not all companies are receptive to that, which is why are you paying them in the first place if you're not going to make the changes? But that's neither here nor there. That has me very interested in where this game is going to go, because on the face of it, it is a cutesy platformer. But
I think that's a good point. It's it's not just a cutesy platformer. It's very funny, Tim Schafer humor.
Yeah.
Of the seams. And it's also it's not the real world. It's like people with psychic powers doing all these things. And yet, so it's kind of cool that they want to be respectful to like people's mental health.
And I think it's worth it pointing out, like, Double Fine, this is not uncharted territories in so much that, first off, it's the second Psychonauts game, and Double Fine hasn't shied away from more, not always the same topics, but like heavier topics with their game behind kind of a cutesy or quirky veneer. Like Broken Age, was dealing with stuff too. So the one level we did see kind of dealt with gambling addiction, which I am an addict and not a gambling addict. All addictions are different, though kind of the same in some ways. And I could say as an addict who just coincidentally had to watch a level about addiction, nothing stood out to me as like, man, you really this one up. Like, it seemed like, just from our limited view, like, yeah, you're playing in a casino. Yeah, it could be probably way easier to just like have a Marge Simpson level view of gambling addiction, but like it seemed well done from what we've seen. I don't know where else the game goes, how heavy it truly gets, if they nail all that stuff, but from the few minutes we saw of that stuff, I was like, yeah, as an addict, I'm not offended.
Yeah.
And the comment sections will tell you I'm very easily offended. So shouts out to Derek.
I think we all are. So please be nice to us, people.
Yeah,
Please.
no, I'm excited for that stuff though, because
Yeah,
I think games. I'm sorry.
I'm so offended right now. You interrupted me. I was just going to launch into like the other thing that we saw that they showed us. Like one of the other big things was a new gameplay mechanic. Raz earns this ability called mental connection, which is the ability to connect different thoughts in somebody's mind. And so the way it works in game is kind of like functionally like a grappling hook, where there'll be these like cloud thoughts and you can like grapple to them with this mental connection ability and snap to them. And then as you snap between different thoughts, you basically connect those ideas. So in the demo we saw, there was like the thought for delight and then like another thought for cilantro, let's say, just representing different things. And so we connected those two, and like Hollis, we were in her mind, and she kind of commented on like, oh, cilantro, it's not bad, or something like that. So it's kind of a fun little
but then
gimmick there.
And then like traversing through that level, right? Like we would connect it to, if there's puzzle sections, right, where you would have to connect cilantro to disgust, and then it would change the VO, right, and be like, this is cilantro is soap and it's disgusting, which cilantro is great, by the way. But yeah, just those kind of tweaks, and then just like kind of the presentation, because you had to go into a lot of menus in Psychonauts, the first one, to really like get the right powers you needed in the situation, and they seem to be aware of that, right, and utilizing all the triggers and all the buttons to make sure you're as limited to switching powers as you can be, right? So it's really streamlining it in a smart way.
With the mental connection too, like it's cool to see them marrying a platformer mechanic with like a narrative reason to be doing it. You know what I'm saying? It's not just like jump from one platform to the next. Like they kind of like bake in some context as to why you need to be going from point A to point B. And I think that like goes a long way in telling a cohesive story, even when it seems like some throwaway dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a broad overview of the game. You can read more about it if you pick up the magazine and talk about our full demo. But like Blake said, that wasn't the only thing we talked about. We talked to Tim in depth for a long period of time about his history and his full career. I did a second big feature on his history with LucasArts, which sounds like it was just a wild, fun journey. I'm kind of jealous of. It's basically how he got his start was at LucasArts. If you're not familiar, he made a lot of point and click adventure games, stuff like Secret of Monkey's Island 1 and 2, Day of the Tentacle, Grim Fandango. Was basically his run through the company, growing from early programmer up through leading a full team. And so we talk about that journey, and it's fun because he had, little, side comments or like, anecdotes about like what it was like working for George Lucas, you met him a couple times, but then also at company picnics, you'd see people like Michael Jackson just like hanging out at the company picnic. You're like, this is a weird experience. So it was fun to just tap his mind about stuff like that. Yeah. Any big takeaways during that time for you guys?
I think there's something to be said about Schafer, and by an extension, his company's openness with us. Like, Tim Schafer did not necessarily just give us his greatest hits. Like, he spoke to his shortcomings as a boss over the years and spoke to, production cycles that went wrong and things like he wished he could have done better. And like, there was a frankness to the way he spoke to us and like things we got to write about that I really appreciated and think is represented really well in your story. So I highly recommend people go on down to GameStop, pick that some up.
Yeah, we think it's a pretty meaty issue too, and there's some other things in there not related to Double Fine if you're totally not interested. So I think it's still a worthwhile issue. But picking up off of the Tim Schafer thing, Blake, one of the big features you wrote was about Double Fine itself and their history.
Yeah,
and they started out in a haunted clog shop, supposedly. Like that was their first office for a couple months, and then they moved into like what could be possibly a worse office, where it was a garage shop in San Francisco, and people would just drive their cars into the garage and park, and their desks would be like right next to their cars. So they're breathing car smog the whole time.
I am so compelled by this office. There's some pictures of it in the issue, and you can actually see some videos of it in the Psychonauts documentary retrospective that Double Fine put out. But yeah, it was a garage they moved into, very garage band-esque, if you will. But there are so many bizarre stories about the beginning of that company, about like their sewage constantly overflowing, someone jumping from a neighboring building onto the roof. Unfortunately, not great.
Leg went through the ceiling, I think, or something.
Broke their leg hitting. It's like the most bizarre thing, and it's really funny to think about them making an E-rated game for Majesco. All the while, like a lot of them were living a kind of a hard life and dealing with some gnarly stuff in that neighborhood, and just like bad office setups. Like. It's a very compelling opening to the journey of that company that I'm endlessly fascinated by. Not so much the haunted clog shop. It was very confusing. We kept hearing about it and no one would tell us more. I don't know what happened.
I wanted to know more, but it seems like there's a dark secret there that they...
Yeah, they'd be like, we were in this haunted clog shop, but then we moved to the garage and they'll talk about that for 45 minutes.
That's how we lost Doug.
Yeah, what happened in that clog shop? Yeah, the garage stories are so funny, and I think there's a reason they stick out so much for people. Is mainly just like it's where the Double Fine was, founded for the most part and made their first game. But like the anecdotes we got about that place are out of control. When you think about like ostensibly that was almost a AAA game back then, like that would never fly these days. Like, can you imagine Naughty Dog making something in a garage? What are you talking about? So just weird early 2000s video game history in there. Recommend people check out.
Yeah, it was a wild story, and I recommend just reading the whole thing for sure. Any other major takeaways or anything you guys want to talk about for the rest of the month? Because we're going to be putting some stuff up online as well. Anything you guys want to highlight?
Just be ready. Just be ready for a little rapid fire action. That's all I got to say.
Right. We did a rapid fire with Tim Schafer. When can people check that out?
That's going to be on Monday. So keep it locked, baby. youtube.com/Game Informer.
Blake, any of the stories?
Yeah, Secrets of Tim Schafer's Rubik's Cube collection. We got the exclusive on it. It's coming up.
You were obsessed with his Rubik's Cubes, so we had a...
I cannot be the only person who has this question. In every shot of Tim Schafer in his office, which they've put out so many documentaries at this point, they're covered in Rubik's Cubes. So if you've ever wanted to know why, find out on GameInformer.com. The answer might surprise you. Probably won't, though.
Well, with that, we should probably take a break, right, guys? We'll come back with some emails. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Once again, thank you to Genshin Impact for sponsoring this week's show. Watch this quick video to see some of the gameplay of this free-to-play game.
I'm here. Time to go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Game Informer Show. We're here to do some community email questions. We're going to answer all of your questions. We love them. Please send them in. podcast@gameinformer.com. Not only questions, we'll play games. If you got some games for us to play, we'll do some improv if you want us. Nobody's asked for that yet, but I'm throwing it out there. Send it in, podcast@GameInformer.com. This first email comes in from B from New Hampshire. They write, so things have changed a lot over the last year. What kinds of things have changed in putting together a cover story in the current state of the world? You've talked about latency in games you've gotten to play remotely, but what about things like interviews and studio tours? Is it harder to get an interviewee to loosen up over video than it would have been in person? Do you guys get to talk to people more remotely than you would in person? Is it a blessing in disguise that you guys don't have to travel? So this is like definitely sort of inside the Game Informer studio type question, but I think people are curious to know how our cover stories work. Just to lay the groundwork, we used to go to studios almost every month for our cover stories, and we'd spend about 2 days there with a team of writers and video people interviewing people and crafting the story. We haven't been able to do that this last year, unfortunately. So yeah, this last year, and Tack, Blake, anybody can jump in when they want to, but this last year it's been mostly video calls, and like personally, I have not liked it as much. I think we've done some really great stories, but I think we tended to get better content when we were visiting studios. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, there's no. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I joined Game Informer during the pandemic, so I haven't necessarily done the studio visits as you all did, but I feel like they are perhaps in some ways can be more regimented. I'm thinking of one team I was on specifically where it felt like they were kind of using the remoteness against us to limit the access we really needed just to do our job. And then sometimes, like with the Double Fine thing, we got an absurd amount of access and it was great. And I don't really know what else being there in person would have added. I think like in-person interviews are always probably going to be better for subtleties, but if you're good at interviews, which we all are, you know how to open someone up even if they're on the phone or Zoom, and you know how to get them talking in the correct ways. So I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag. I would love to have been able to do them in person if possible, but outside of like one example that jumps to mind, I don't feel that remote for me personally has hindered too much on my end, but I also joined at a weird time. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, for me, just the thing that I kind of miss is when you're at a studio, you're hanging out with people all day. There's just a lot of there is some downtime that you don't have when you're doing everything through video calls. Like you're talking to that person for the hour that you're on the video call with them, and then you hang up in their house and I'm at mine, and we don't hang out anymore. And I kind of miss being able to just chat with people for 5-10 minutes between interviews or over lunch or something like that. There's just downtime where things come up, and sometimes that'll spark a cool idea for oh, we should actually do an online feature on that. Or they'll say something about their history working on X or Y game that I didn't know that they had worked on in the past. Yeah. And it's oh, I should ask you about that later, just as background. So there's stuff that I think we miss out on.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no on a Zoom call, there's no I'm just going to leave my recorder running type thing, and what it picks up. So that is true.
For sure.
I think from my perspective, there's been a lot lost. Obviously, many other industries have suffered a lot more. I'm glad that we're still able to continue to do what we do. But man, the moment to moment stuff in the studio always felt incredibly valuable to me. You'll just be you'd be like, well, that's a really cool boss design. It's well, let's go talk to the person who made it. I'll see if they're available. And then along the way, maybe you pick up 2 other members of the team that can offer some other insights to it. So if somebody wrote the music for it, or they made the sound of a grenade going off or something. Just random stuff that happens while you're there for a full day in studio. That stuff really adds some flavor and some color to stuff that is really, as it was said, it's much more regimented, and you're there to talk about X topic, and yeah, you can certainly bring them out to talk about whatever you want, but it's Zoom call just like this feels way more impersonal than when we used to be around that crappy old table in the Game Informer office, for instance. There's just something to that. I think there's something lost there that,
it's arguable about how valuable that stuff is, but I think it was pretty valuable from my perspective on previous covers. And that changes the whole like demo scene too, right? Like the way that we're doing things now with remote demos is nowhere near as I don't think anybody's happy with it on either side of the equation, right? But it's just a whole mess of figuring out technological solutions to the old demo event or demo occasion, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of challenges, but I think everybody has adapted very well, I guess, considering.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully this kind of stuff will resume as it was in the near future. It looks like we might be able to get on track here in the next decade.
For sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm skewed because I was a freelancer before this. So when the pandemic hit, my day-to-day did not change at all, which is probably important to consider when I'm jumping in this question.
For sure. I think from a video, and I mean, you guys see it on a daily basis, right? Like it's now calls like this instead of bringing a DSLR in there and actually like worrying about lighting and cinematography and composition, right? Like, and that's limiting and that sucks because that's, one of the reasons I wanted to join here was to help in that way that Hansen started that and do more studio tours and stuff like that. I noticed if you notice video issues and glitches and stuff, I've noticed them too. You know what I mean? Like it's frustrating from an audio perspective to get that presentation because I think the content we're putting out is great. It's the presentation that has taken a hit because of not everyone has, a cam link set up to have a crisp visual, right? Like, and that's hard. I do think it has afforded us some interviews that I don't know would have been available to us like last year. Just because it's like, well, now everyone has some sort of webcam and some sort of microphone. So that's been nice getting some extra time maybe outside of the covers, right? But I can't wait to get that experience, right? Because I haven't got a cover trip yet. Like my first cover trip was Miles Morales Spider-Man, and we did that all digital, right? I guess I was at my girlfriend's parents' place in South Dakota, so maybe a little bit of a trip.
You got a trip to South Dakota out of that.
Yeah.
It was technically a cover story trip.
It was a cover story trip. A lot less
You go to Mount
Spider-Man
Rushmore?
stuff. So no, not that time. Stayed away.
Ah.
So yeah.
You see how big their heads were? Imagine them breathing on you the whole time.
But crazy.
And that was built to scale. That's how big the founding fathers were.
That's
A lot
wild.
of people don't know that.
And they didn't have bodies, which is kind of weird.
They're just floating heads.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful for the day too. I get to go on my first official cover story and actually, take a camera out like I used to and shoot and make some magic,
For sure. And hopefully it doesn't sound like we're whining because our jobs are incredible. And we're not bragging here, but everybody's had problems. But yeah, like I do think our content will be even better in the future when we can go visit people in person. So I look forward to that. All right, this next email comes in from Landon. They write in, they say, I just finished Resident Evil Village and decided to randomly go back and replay Fallout 4 when it dawned on me. It would be cool to see Capcom set a Resident Evil game in a post-apocalyptic setting. The movie doesn't count, I guess, according to Landon. Something in the vein of Metro or the Stalker series would be cool with an RE twist. What do you guys think?
Let me jump in here, Ben. Hi, Playcaster Game Informer. As a resident expert here, resident expert evil. Resident Evil 3 Extinction is a post-apocalyptic Resident Evil story. You should check that out because that is the best movie of those 6 films. And I think that would be so cool.
I'm sorry,
There's so much you could do
Landon
there.
says the movie doesn't count, though. It's not a real Resident Evil thing.
Yeah, but like it does because it's awesome. It's like those movies are great, and I think that is like the best example of Paul W.S. Anderson going his own way with them. But I think the post-apocalypse, such as it did in that movie, would afford that series the ability to go to some wild places. You don't have to. You could do anything in the post-apocalypse. Don't have to worry about how it fits into the broader lore. Just nuke it off the planet.
I mean, they don't worry about that now.
Don't get me started, Tech. We already had this fight.
Yeah, it would be interesting. They said Fallout 4. they invoked Fallout
Yeah.
4, which makes me think open world as well. And I'm like, oh, that'd be
Sure.
kind of interesting to see a Resident Evil in an open world setting. They sort of, I think Village is probably the closest we've ever had to something open world, and I wouldn't call it open world for sure, but
That
something a little more open would be kind of cool.
that's
I
intriguing.
think like. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's intriguing to me for the same reason something like, and bear with me for a second, like PUBG was intriguing when it first came out. In that there's always gonna be tension when you open a new door to go and like find loot or better gear and stuff, especially if it was open world. So I feel like that could be interesting in recapturing that if that would ever be something Capcom would want to go towards, right? So that's interesting.
I think one of the things that interests me in zombie media, The Last of Us did this in interesting ways, I thought, was showing how a virus might progress over the years and mutate. And the post-apocalypse is an easy narrative way to jump ahead in time. And it's like, okay, how does the typical zombie from Resident Evil, what are they like 20 years later when, they're kind of the apex predator in this world because society collapsed, How do they evolve and how do they change?
Did they start building a society?
Well, we live in a
language?
society, so yes. I think that would be really compelling to check out. Army of the Dead did that kind of, the new Zack Snyder joint. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, zombies could talk in that, couldn't they?
They have some communication between them, but there's different tiers of zombies, which I thought was interesting. There's like the Shambler or whatever, and then there's like the King and Queen zombie, and they can kind of communicate with each other. Like seeing how zombies would evolve over the years. I think the Resident Evil series would do interesting stuff with that, especially mixing in other monsters.
And do zombies make honey in that universe? Moving on. Next email, Mike B from Flavortown writes in, says, "Hello everyone at the Game Informer office. First, I just want to say thank you for making my favorite thing to listen to." Oh, thank you. What specifically is he talking about?
The bee joke that you made.
That's right. You're welcome for that, Mike B. Hey, Mike, do you lay honey? If Mike says, if you could pick one of these franchises to get a really cool new game, who would you pick and why? So here are the options: the Power Rangers, the Thundercats, or Voltron. Also, if you have any other ideas for franchises that might be cool in games, let me know. I don't know if this guy's making a game or what, but Thundercats.
I want a Thundercats Xenoblade style game. All right, I'm done. That's it.
I think that's it. We found it.
Power Rangers by Platinum. Shut down.
It's interesting because Power Rangers and Voltron are like almost the same thing in my mind. It's just kind of like Voltron is cooler Power Rangers, right? Isn't that how it goes?
Because it's a mech.
So it's interesting that those are the two, but I'm with Tack. I think Thundercats is the way to go.
Thundercats is definitely the IP. It's about what you do with it, right?
Thunder. Cats.
Has there ever been a Thundercats video game? Has to have been, right?
Probably, right?
Has to have been.
At some point.
Theoretically
Altered
impossible.
Beast kind of there.
Yeah, it's probably done by Platinum at some point. I don't know.
That would be awesome. Are you kidding me? Oh my god.
Honestly, yeah, like a Bayonetta style action game with Thundercats. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. To answer his other question, any game, any property developed by Platinum, doesn't matter what it is, just give me that.
Yeah, what would your Power Rangers game be, Blake? What kind of game would that be?
Well, I was thinking it'd be very focused on like hand-to-hand combat. But now I'm thinking, what about a Wonderful 101 style Platinum game where you're kind of commanding the entire Power Rangers unit at once? And I'm split between the two. I would think I want to lean towards Wonderful 101 because I wish they would do another game like that where you're kind of like the Power Rangers are a cohesive unit you are controlling at once and kind of using in tandem with each other while also being able to kind of switch between their various different powers and abilities. I think could make for a compelling game, and I wish they would re-explore.
You know what I think it should be? I think it should be an XCOM style game where so you're moving them across the board, and then you have your different mechs that they're in, right? What were they called? The Zords. That's right.
Zord, yeah.
How did I forget such a common word like Zord? But yeah, then you're like moving them across a grid. Then you can like join forces and like you're talking about, make
Yeah.
one Mechazord.
Wasn't there a Power Rangers fighting game a couple years ago?
There have been many Power Ranger games. I think there even is like, isn't there like a semi XCOM-y style Power Rangers game? It's a tactical RPG, right? That kind of counts.
Oh yeah, but it wasn't good. That's what I want. I want a good one.
Okay,
To be clear,
sure. Just all right. That's cool.
I think I'm going to stick with Wonderful 101 style Power Rangers game made by Platinum. That sounds awesome.
Okay, cool. All right, that ends the emails. If you have an email, please send it in, podcast@gameinformer.com. We love them. That brings us to the next segment of the show, a segment we like to call Required Reading. You guys ready for this? Burr, 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 burr. It's been a while, but we're bringing it back.
About this. What do we do on this one, Reeves?
People write in, podcast@gameinformer.com, and they send in, these are the games that I think every gamer should play. If you like games on any level, this should be on your required reading syllabus. So we're trying to form an ultimate list of 10 games. I don't know what we'll do when we hit 10, but we're taking submissions right now. So these are the nominees. They're not the full finished required reading. We'll eventually get to that, but we're taking nominees. Right now, our nominees are Chrono Trigger, The Last of Us, the first one, Civ 5, Diablo 2, Doom from 1993, the original Doom, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and Dark Souls.
It's a
So
good
that's
list.
what we have on our list. It's a good list. It's a great list. And I want to try to add, well, we'll see if we can add one more to it, because Kobe Sessions writes in and they say, "Hey, GI crew. So while I don't agree with your dismal ranking of Kingdom Hearts or rejection of Kingdom Hearts from the required reading list, I can now see that the game has many flaws and might keep it from the Hall of Fame. My second submission is Resident Evil 4, which I just replayed on Switch this past year, and in my opinion, it's as good now as it originally was on the GameCube. What is there to say, really? It's dynamic difficulty, clever writing, and intense / constantly evolving gameplay makes it timeless. There's a good amount of enemy weapon variety, it's an awesome soundtrack, and a bunch of great boss fights and some genuinely terrifying moments, especially on the first playthrough. There's a reason why it's still making many top 10 lists today. I personally don't think RE has surpassed the benchmark that 4 set." So what do you guys think?
Didn't this one come up before? I swear. Didn't we already have this conversation? I feel like we did.
Well, hey, it's a new opportunity to talk about it.
Is
We have
it?
to talk about it.
I want to know though. Like for real. Am I crazy?
It's very, very, very possible, Dan. I'm an imperfect person with an imperfect email system,
No.
but I hope not. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on Resident Evil 4 and whether or not you think it's required reading.
I mean, Blake, you wrote the book on this. Like, let's get it. Let's get
Look,
it popping.
I was going to let other people talk first, but yeah, shut it down. We're putting it on the list. No ifs, ands, or buts. Resident Evil 4, I was literally playing back through that game 2 days ago. Game is phenomenal. And if we're going to put The Last of Us on the list, that game doesn't exist in its current incarnation without what Resident Evil 4 did for the third-person shooter, which we're still basically playing games the same way Resident Evil 4 pioneered 15, 20 years later. That game is phenomenal for all the points brought up in the email, except the writing, which is terrible. I'm not sure what you were talking about there. But that game is...
Thank you.
Yeah, that game is still... it's like, I rarely replay games, and I'm on my 4th playthrough in the last year of Resident Evil 4. Like, I'm constantly just picking it up, playing back through it. I think it is so engaging, creates such a great gameplay loop, is scary when it needs to be, is over the top when it needs to be. I have very little issues with the pacing or when it goes completely off the rails in the back third. I think that game works, and just what it did for video games just is well known at this point. That I think that alone gets it a spot on our list.
Wow.
If you're gonna put Last of Us there, you got to put Resident Evil 4 there. No ifs,
I
ands,
don't know if I understand that logic, but I mean, I like both those games, so I don't have a problem.
Well,
with
I think just like what I guess where I'm going with that is what Resident Evil 4 did for the third-person shooter in terms of how to streamline the aiming and just the action and engagement, how they kind of changed the camera perspective, as it were. You don't necessarily get a game like The Last of Us in its current incarnation without Resident Evil 4 kind of coming first. And really, if you think about it, just moving the camera about a foot and change the game. Game over. It's great. Best game ever.
Game over. It is a very good game. Alex, have you played Resident Evil 4?
Nope. I just beat Resident Evil Village. It's my first one I've beaten since 5. So the series is relatively undiscovered for me. I am, as much as I don't like, I guess I don't even know if I can say I don't like spooky games anymore because I really liked Village and I want to keep playing 2. So it's something that's always intrigued me. Like I grew up watching G4 and like Cheat had a bunch of stuff on Resident Evil, like X-Play would, like, so I've always understood the cultural significance behind it, right? And I think, and Ben, as someone who is an expert in Resident Evil, another resident expert evil, this feels like the one to put on from the series, if not, or I guess maybe 2, but I don't know. Like I think
I'd hear some arguments for 2.
Yeah,
or even the first remake, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But 2. I mean, maybe they could both be on there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it deserves to be on the nominees, if nothing else. It's a great game. Blake really went into it already. Tack, have you played RE4? Are you a fan?
I do like it. I don't love the argument, the Last of Us argument against result.
What's that?
revolving
What's
around.
that?
Look, Tack.
I don't think we've
it's
got
a
time for
terrible
that.
argument. That's the. But
If
what do you
we're gonna-
think?
If we're gonna
about,
put an RE game on there,
RE4?
sure. There.
And you heard it here
Convincing.
first. What an argument. Yeah, I didn't like the Last of Us argument, but hearing you say that, Tack,
Sure.
yeah, I get that.
But okay, what if I open it up to just you don't get third person shooters in their current incarnation without RE4 coming first?
I don't think I buy that either.
That's okay. You don't have to. It's just correct.
That's fine. I'm not buying what you're selling. I to make the RE4 joke.
What are you buying?
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think we gotta do it. We gotta at least consider it. And I think part of maybe if we have talked about it before, we might have left it off because we kind of tend to skew is this game still fun to play? And I think there's an element there of well, first of all, Resident Evil 4 is still fun to play, but are there better games to play? Like games that are even more fun to play? Yeah, maybe, but this game was so influential, and I think part of the element of required reading that we're honing in on is, was this game influential and important, and should I play it and understand sort of the origin story of games? I think that's why Doom 1993 is on here, right? There's definitely better first-person shooters these days, but
I wasn't on that episode. I don't know why we picked that one.
Well, I'm telling you, Dan, that's why. And I think
Oh.
there's a certain reason to explore, play games that are still fun, but also, even more importantly, why are they important to gaming? And you got to play some of these games to understand that. So that's why I think RE4 at least deserves to be on the nomination list. So I'm going to do it, everybody. I'm putting it on the nominee list.
Do it.
I feel like that plays in my Last of Us argument, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yep,
dropping
you
it.
convinced me. You convinced me.
I'm going to drop it. I'm sorry.
All right, that brings us to the next segment of the show, a little segment we like to call Get Wrecked. I'm going to make it easy on you guys. We've already recommended a ton of Psychonauts stuff. We recommended Mass Effect stuff earlier in the episode. I'm going to say, go check all that stuff out. GameInformer.com/Psychonauts2, all our Psychonauts stuff. You're going to love it. It's great. We got to move on. It's already a long episode, and it's going to get even longer, guys, because coming up next, we have that interview with Jennifer Hale and Courtenay Taylor, the 2 Mass Effect stars who've been in tons and tons of games. Please stick around for that interview. Thank you, Blake and Tack and Alex, for being on the show.
This episode is sponsored by Genshin Impact. Watch this video to catch a glimpse of the game's new character, Eula.
People tell me that if I just spoke more softly, others may find it easier to forgive me. I condemn you! Trees to the core! Eye for an eye!
Welcome back, everybody. I'm still here. I'm joined today by Leanna Rupert,
Hello.
We're tag teaming it because we have a double dose with this next interview. It's a lot, and I need the help. We have Jennifer Hale, who you probably know as Commander Shepard from the Mass Effect franchise. She was Ash in Overwatch. She was Naomi Hunter in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. I could go on and on because she holds the Guinness World Record for most prolific female voice actor in games. Jennifer, how's it going today?
Thank you. It's going great, Ben. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Glad to have you. And like I said, there's two people on today's show, and the other one is Courtenay Taylor, who was also in Mass Effect as Jack. You might remember. She was also the main survivor, aka the sole survivor in Fallout 4. She played Ada Wong in the Resident Evil franchise, Amanda Holiday in Destiny 2. How's it going, Courtenay?
Keitel. And Keitel. And you kicked ass as Keitel. Sorry.
I knew Leanna wouldn't let me
I'm a
forget
Destiny
that.
fan.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. Everything is great. I'm so happy to be here with Jennifer Hale again.
Yes.
More Jennifer Hale.
Having fun with us. Yay, us.
That's been the greatest thing about Mass Effect Legendary Edition is that I actually have gotten to see her more often in the last 7 days than probably the last 7 months.
Yeah.
Certainly that. Maybe 17 months.
It's gonna be fun. You guys are doing a victory lap, I'm sure. Did you guys go into the studio to re-record anything?
Mm-mm.
So
No,
best
they
case
brought
scenario.
that
It's like,
thing-
hey, let's go take the victory lap. We don't have to do any more work.
Well, it's we also, none of us are on the payroll for the victory lap either, but we're super, super happy to be. I mean, this world, I was just looking at some stats. I think, what did I download? It was #1 on Steam, all this crazy stuff. This game is just, I'm going to look and find this thing. It's, let's see. It was, #1 top seller, peak concurrent players at 59,000. It's just insane. It's
Which is more than
insane.
the original trilogy, which is awesome.
It's amazing. Our YouTube, on my YouTube channel, we streamed the panel that we did this weekend. And I loved that panel so much because we had the devs in. We had the OG devs, not all of them, of course, but just some excellent members of the team. And we had some members of the legendary dev team as well. So we got to ask, I actually piped in and asked a couple questions. I stole it from Ash Sevilla. And it was just so cool to hear that experience. And I think we've had, approaching 60,000 views of that video, and it's been up for 48 hours. So it's the community it's such a powerful community. I don't know if you guys saw the love letter from Mass Effect to the community, just about I love Mass Effect. It did this for me. And then this one got me where this guy was like, Mass Effect is what inspired me to become a scientist and go work for NASA. And I was like, oh my God, now I'm dying. It was just beautiful.
In a roundabout way, you could be responsible for putting people on Mars.
Oh my God. I am simply the ink in the tip of that amazingly assembled pen. It was just wow.
I don't know. I'm not mad at the thought of with you and Courtenay, you and having Jack, the biotic, being in charge of somebody being on Mars. I think that's poetic.
I think it's brilliant. Who wants to write that? Let's make that.
Exactly.
I'm sure fan fiction writers are already on it just from this being talked about once.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that? I gotta ask, because this is something I try to explain to people that never experienced it the first time, that in my 30 years of gaming, I have never seen a community as passionate as Mass Effect is. Mass Effect and Dragon Age both. There's a magic there that I don't know. It feels like it's unparalleled. How are you guys feeling about all of the new people discovering your guys' part in this huge venture?
I think it's, I'm thrilled to see like I said on Saturday, I think that, the themes of this game are universal and timeless, and that there are, BioWare did such a great job of crafting so many different characters that people could see themselves in. And I think it'll be interesting. I actually was talking to a guy on Twitter, and or on Instagram, and he was saying that, playing it at 36 is, and he's a dad, is totally different than when he started playing it at 24. And so your choices are different. Your love is different. So I think it's both amazing to be able to gift it to another generation, and also to sort of regift it to the people who were like the OG players, so that they get this amazing new technological experience, but they also get to see how they've grown as players and how their journey has changed.
Do you guys go back and play the games you're in? Are you going back and playing Legendary Edition? Is that cringeworthy in some way?
Playing, but I will confess I have been kind of stalking out on the internet, and like the Friday night, I stayed up past my bedtime and kind of snuck around on Twitch and YouTube finding people who were streaming it. And like one guy had never played it before, and he was like, what? And I dropped in. I was like, hey, that looks cool. Oh yeah, I was that one. You should do that one. He's like, wait, what? And I was like, bye. And then one girl, I wish I could remember her name. Oh, she was amazing. And I was on Twitter and her friend was like, go see her. And she was like, no, I'll barf. So I hopped into Twitch and I was like, hey, don't barf. And it was really fun. I had a really good time. It's a cool way to see the game if you don't play, like you can just like piggyback on these people who are really good. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to take a really long time. I mean, I've tried to play some of the games and I get that, like, there's a couple things that happen. I get nauseous a little bit.
Yes.
And also I am super monofocused. And so during like melee play, I can just be like, but to actually have to like watch things in the corner and figure out where I am and be able to see things coming and be dealing with what's in front of me, it's obvious that not all women can multitask because I suck.
It's true of men too.
And it's hard too, honestly. And I've tried to give this up as, the further into my career I get. It's really hard for me not to be self-critical, and I am trying to be more gentle with myself. But there is no way for you to have to do this job when you get so little information at the start, and then to be able to know the whole story and see who's who and everything, and not go back and be like, I think I would have done this or that. It's the level of information that we are working with in the beginning is usually, so small. So how do you come out the other end? It's not like watching a movie where you're like, oh, I know what the script was.
Yeah.
I plotted everything out from the beginning when we had our table reads and stuff. That to me is a little bit more of like a linear progression where, but this is sort of like all over the place. And also it's really hard to focus when it's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that people may not realize is that this job, game acting, 85% of the time it's what we call cold reading. You don't get the script ahead of time. And if you most of the time when you get the script, it's an Excel spreadsheet with just your lines. It doesn't have the context. It doesn't have what just happened or even how big. There's all these questions before you say each line, which is, obviously, who am I? What do I want? Who am I talking to? What just happened? What's going on between me and them in the arc of our story together? Where are we? Did I just meet them or did they just kill me? Like, or are they trying to kill, like, and then we made up after they tried to, there's all, especially in branching storylines, it's insane. No, we walk in and there it is on the monitor. And we're like, okay, all right. And we ask the director, the God blessed voice director. And we say, okay, so what just happened? They said this and this and this. Okay, do it. And we'll do it like a couple times, maybe, for really being fancy, 6 or 7 times, maybe 8, usually like between 2 and 4 times. And then it goes to you guys, goes to market. Okay, next.
Well, they do a few things in between.
Oh yeah. Well, sorry. It goes to the team to edit.
Yes,
you got to put the label on it.
Yeah.
It goes to the team, and it's a standing long jump. For all intents and purposes, you are just trying to get as far as you can from a standing position, and it's amazing that. When you do have a voice director who's there, who's going to read in with you, who's going to give you stuff. I mean, and there are some amazing ones out there, and I can't underscore, and Jen, I think, would agree with me, how important it is to have someone that can synthesize this. These game Bibles are huge.
Yeah.
Massive. And even if you could read them as an actor, you would never remember. This is like a movie that you are walking through and meeting 100 different people and having relationships with and stuff. So to have this voice director who not only can synthesize the writers in the room or on the line, the actual material that's coming down the pike that can be being written as we're going along, right?
Yeah.
So often. And then wrangling actors who, can be crazy and sensitive, and to be able to put all of that together and be an actor, there's some really dreamy voice directors out there. And I just, when we get them, we just want to make out with them.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And Mass Effect was a great example of having really great voice directors and also giving, the benefit of the decided upon line beforehand. So I think that's what synthesized the experience so much more than in some other games, is that instead of you being like, well, I think if the person says it like this is how I would react to that feeder line. You are actually like, okay, there's Mark and he's saying the line as intended and as they're going to use it.
Well, how often do you have the dialogue from the other characters recorded before you guys record? Does that ever happen where you're actually responding to what's going to be in the game?
Extremely rare.
It's extremely rare. Like on this one, we had a system called Veda on Mass Effect, started around Mass Effect 2, where they would do that. Like whoever was first in, they would have their lines available for the next people coming in, and it would just add to it. But I was typically one of the
first in.
I was first. So I was like, hey, Lonely Void, let's do this. And
she did get to be the great decider, and I'm here for it. So she also gets credit.
Caroline and Ginny and Chris, they were the great. Caroline was the great decider. I was just the great I was the great servant.
The great executor.
I was the executor. Yeah.
Not the executioner. The executor.
I gotta ask that because I was like, okay, I'm trying to picture, because I know for me, even just recording a voicemail message, I panic, well, no, I sound mean there, or no, I sound like I don't really care if I want to respond to your message or not. So,
Usually I
overthink. So I'm trying to look at this thing with you going full renegade and Courtney, Jack has a lot of built up anger, especially in Mass Effect 2, really powerful voice lines that sound guttural. Walk us through that. How do you do that? I know that's the magic of voice acting, but how do you do that not having any of that information? Because
I did have information on Jack's backstory. So, but it wasn't like they were here's a script, feel free to familiarize yourself with it for the next 6 months or so, make your, decisions and stuff.
Did they show you what Jack would be wearing in that first game?
They did show me some visuals, and I was so excited because actually I had shaved my head in high school. I went to a high school that had a really strict dress code, and I actually dyed my hair pink. And so they removed me from school until I had a natural hair color. And so I shaved my head, and they were not happy about that. But I was like, hey man, this is how it came out.
It's natural.
Pretty specified. I could shave it.
And I did have a mohawk in high school and stuff like that. So it made me definitely feel like this was kind of kismet. But the magic of voiceover is really not, the magic of voice acting is not magic. It is lots of hard work. It's being, taking lots of classes. It's being in touch with your emotions. It's all of the things that, the technical things. But for me personally, the connection with Jack was that I had gone through, not obviously anything like what Jack did, but I did have a hard time in school. I was, I had funny hair colors in a time when people, would walk up to you and yank your hair and be like, where'd you park your spaceship, weirdo? And, I'd be like, around the corner to the left. Didn't you see it? And then, you get hit again. But, I fought, I was a punk rocker. I went to shows. It was during a time when people just didn't do that. And I ran with a pretty rough crowd. And I had a lot of anger and a lot of emotions that I wasn't in charge of a lot of displaced anger. And so the amazing writing and being able to, I'm still really in touch with my emotions for better or for worse. And so reading the context of Jack, what she had gone through, and that feeling of, not thinking that you're worthy of being loved, being like the best offense is a whatever defense, basically punch now and ask questions later was sort of, very familiar to me. And so it felt like I had this deep connection because I understand how hard it can be when you have no way to channel or harness the rage of things that have happened to you, and to come out on the other side knowing that you are greater than the sum of your parts, and it meant a lot to me. It was an excellently crafted storyline. So I'm incredibly grateful to those guys.
Super interesting. Thanks. One thing that I find fascinating is just like the behind the scenes process. And I know it varies from game to game, but my understanding with BioWare is they're pretty rigid with like the lines, like you have to say it word for word, and there's not a lot of room for play. And do you guys find that process helpful in some way, or is it, you're kind of on guide rails, or is it hard? You wish you had a little bit more play? Because I know some games there's like, hey, let's just explore what's going on.
It's definitely fun when you get to explore, and Courtenay can speak to this, but I think part of the reason why, I've had the experience that I could not stray a punctuation mark from what was on the page is that, I've got a couple BioWare games going right now where I'm a player character, and when you're a player character, someone else is coming in to also voice those player character lines. And if you guys start to diverge, then it puts a huge load on the tech team that just makes their load. It's a ridiculous amount of work for them, and it's unnecessary. And if I can, part of my job is to be able to marry to every letter of that script, if that's what's required, or improv, if that's what's required, or, riff and whatever. My job is to show up and fulfill the vision of the writer and the team. Like, that's it. That's my job.
Speaking of improv, you do a lot. You guys do like a lot of the side characters, like the NPCs that are kind of in the background. You know what? It took me like 15 playthroughs to realize you were the voice of the decontamination thing, and I was so ashamed that it took me that long because I kept thinking,
it's a compliment.
Yeah. That means it's working.
It's working. I was so it was like one of those epiphany moments. I was like, wow, I'm freaking out over a decontamination voice. I need to stop getting so involved.
AIs matter too. AIs matter too, Liana.
Yes. I think, if a game is written well, it's not hard. Their character, and I think it depends on, how you meet with the character. Like I said, Jack was like falling out of bed for me, but also having great writing is so important. And also being good at what you do, because yes, that is our job, is to make sure that it doesn't matter. There's some clunky stuff out there for various reasons. And you know what? It's your job to make it awesome. Make it work.
Can you think of a line like that where you're like, man, this just doesn't sound natural, and you've somehow made it work?
I would never tell. We used to call it polish. I started my career down south doing small market car commercials, and every now and then you just get a piece, and we would just call it, you got to polish the turd. Let's do it. But I would never polish and tell. Yeah.
What's the most fun you've had with improv? Like doing those kind of like side characters? Did you?
I think
where you're like,
for me, I didn't get to do it as much of it in this game. I think the most fun I've ever had improvising in a game was in BioShock Infinite, because Oliver Vicker and I played twins. We're the test twins, and Ken Levine, actually, we did our sessions at the same time. We weren't in the same booth for technical reasons, or we were separated by glass, but we could always see each other. So we could make eye contact and just go, and we would get a take of the scene just as it is. And then Ken would say, all right, what do you want to do? Let's play. And it was just like, and I think that row, row, row your boat. I think that was all like, I just riffed on that one. It was, yeah.
That wasn't in the script?
I don't remember. Ken let us play so much. I think that was, I don't know. He just let me go with it.
So how much stuff do you think you recorded that didn't make it into the game?
Couldn't tell you. I don't mark that in my head. I'm literally like Dory. Because we live under an NDA, and I actually am the stunt Dory. We live under an NDA, and my job is to 100% live in the moment so that when you guys play, you can. So when I'm done that moment, it's gone. like I didn't notice it. I wasn't tracking it and making it happen just so. I was just like, we're in this. And
that's the thing is that you kind of black out like a lot of times where a director will say, can you do it just like you did? Let's do take B, just do what you did in take B. And I'm like, I don't remember. I'm not listening to it. Like if you're doing it right, I think.
Yeah. You're like,
you're not listening to yourself. You're like, I'm like, I have no idea what I did. Can you play it back for me? And if I am noticing, then I'm probably not as into it as I should be, because then like standing outside of myself, listening and trying to make something work.
Yep.
Oh, I never thought about it that way, but yeah, I could definitely see that, because it does. There's some games out there where you can kind of tell, like the voice acting, they didn't have a lot of support, or like they had like one or two takes, and sometimes you can tell if it feels a little stilted and
disconnected. I think part of what, when you watch those performances where you're like, oh yeah, that was really good, versus you watch performances and you're like, oh my God, that's the difference, I think, from when an actor is made something good versus an actor has lived something very real for themselves, for the character,
It's important to think about, certain games. Like so often we will get games that are like, you have to say this line, but we're going to drop it into the game. Like budgets affect things, right? So, you can look at like story is so important. You can play these amazing, indie games that have great story and not a lot of flash. And you can play other games, with differing budget levels, and you're going to get stuff that, for different time constraints, money, things like that are going to have to drop things into the game. And so often it's really nobody's fault. It's just a constraint of what the thing is, how much time the devs have to get it out there, and what kind of a budget that they're working with as well. So I always try and be very, gentle with art as much as possible. Because I think people forget that it's not just like everything is not equal. And people, I don't know any game companies that are just like, let's just get this crap out here. And, like there's most of the time, there's a huge body of devs working their asses off, trying to get this stuff made well under their constraints. And so I'm always, like,
amen. Amen. Yes to the devs. Yes.
Yeah. Going back to Mass Effect real quick. I'm curious, Jen, when you started, did you get to listen to Mark Mears' take on the Mail Shepherd? Like, what was that process?
That's actually how we started to balance the whole workload of creating files that would fit into the same space. In Mass Effect 1, in our first few sessions, I think, they would bring in what they'd already recorded with Mark, and they would play it for me. And then I would give them that musicality, in that timing on the first take. And then the second take, I would do the same intention with my vibe added to it in the same timing. And then the third take, I would do what I wanted, but with the same timing, so.
That just feels like it'd be super hard to like do that and also like emote in some capacity. It's like a math problem on some level. Hey, all right.
We're jugglers, right? We juggle the words and the story. We juggle the ability to speak and stay in the right box physically for the kid, and not wear earrings like this that are noisy, and clothes that are noisy and stuff. And then we juggle the understanding the material, and then we juggle the ball of understanding the material connected to our own emotional life, and then we add in the ball of these three external things just happened, and then we add in another ball of that happened the right before this, and you're headed over there, and then you add the ball of and you got to do it in this amount of time because that's the space we have. And it's just adding juggle balls to the pile.
Do you just walk out of those recording sessions mentally destroyed? Is it to the point where it's like, okay, now I have to go to a family barbecue or something? How do I have a normal human conversation? Like, is that hard?
I will often walk out lightheaded. Like I really can't focus for a while. And if it's a 2 in a day, that's like a whoo. But yeah, quite often lightheaded. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Courtenay, I know you came in on the second game. Did you do any research going in? Like, did you play the first game, or were you listening to what Jen was doing or any of that?
Nope.
Not at all, huh?
She
You're
came
like,
in
"I
on the
got
merits
this."
of her own amazingness.
You don't want
kind
me
of
for
like
me.
Jack though. Like every time I've seen you on panels and every time I've just even on social media, like you have Jack vibes of like, I'm a good person, but I'll kick your ass if I have to.
The secret is, I think, that we're both like soft, gooey centers with crunchy outsides. And so that's
Iron
usually-
marshmallow.
No, you know what? I gotta say, I only started, God, this is real bad to say, but you know, like I knew what I was like, I loved her and I was like, I'm good. And as I've gotten further into my career, I pay more attention now. I think that I got some mileage probably off of just being like, this is what I do. Pretty cool, huh? Whatever. And then I realized, I mean, my whole career was kind of ass backwards into voice acting. And so like, I am not somebody who grew up, you know, doing theater or singing or anything like that. I hated when I went to do theater training, my least favorite classes were masks and voice and speech. I was like, these are so dumb. Why would I ever need these? And now,
Well,
yeah, it's all about like being an animal and like getting it in your body and not being able to be like, so yeah, masks class, pay attention, guys.
You actually do things like in video game recording where you pretend to be an animal? Is that a thing?
Sometimes you're hired to be.
yeah. Rivet and Ratchet and Clank is Jennifer.
Oh, sure.
Talked about new
Come back,
characters.
Spin.
I just played a flying cheesy poof, like butterfly and bug snacks and like, but I don't have, like, I kind of asked backwards my way into this whole career. And so when I got into it, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I don't know. I just get to do this. And I think when Jack came along, I was still in that phase. And now I'm like, you know, frantically, continuously trying to like, you know, do more accent work, learn how to sing, you know, everyone like try and be like, oh yeah, I can sing show tunes.
Totally. Well, you just did Kyle.
Everybody else can. And so
I don't do show tunes. I do them my way. How about that?
she is, yeah, but she sings like Cinderella.
I was about to say, I was like, you have
like,
a really good,
you know, like, so yeah, it's at that point I wasn't thinking about it. I was just stoked to get in there. And I was working with Janie McSwain, who was one of my favorite teachers who I had trained with and stuff. So I felt pretty safe. I think if I had gone back into some things like that and realized what kind of a gauntlet I was running, then I don't know. I think there's a certain level of freedom when you don't know what you're buying into. You know, same thing with Fallout. I kind of didn't really, it's kind of like that goldfish thing that Jen was talking about, the earthworm thing. It's like, if you actually go and figure out what you're going to be a part of, sometimes I think for me, I get too precious about it. Mm-hmm. And so I only realized like that Fallout was truly a big deal when I was at E3 and they were announcing the whole thing. And I could see like a line of people going around the block in Hollywood. And I was like, oh, we have to start over, guys. This is a big thing.
Nobody during the recording process was like, yeah, the Fallout franchise is kind of a big deal.
It is, but you're just not thinking about that. You're not, like, it's not tangible to me. It's not like, you know, I can't tell anybody that I'm working on this thing, right? So it's not like I can walk out and be like, yo, dudes, you know, just moved a little Mass Effect, gonna be a big deal. Like, I didn't hang out with voice actors at that point in my career. I didn't know really, I didn't have very many friends in the industry. And I was still hanging out with my, you know, my punk rock buddies from high school. and so it's just not real. It's not like you're getting feedback on getting to do this thing and then being like, hey, you know, and people being able to cheer you on. You're like, I be quiet. I go in this booth. I do this thing. I come back out. I can't tell anybody about it. And I move on to the next thing until it comes out. And then I'm like, oh God, this is a big thing.
Well, yeah,
also,
you got to be good at keeping secrets, apparently.
Yeah, and there's a decent amount of lag There's a decent amount of lag time too between the time we finish what we're doing and the team gets everything else into place that has to be into place, and then it's released. and also, yeah, we're not allowed to talk about it. And you just don't know. I remember when I started the first Mass Effect, they were like, this is a trilogy. And I was like, okay, cool. I think I just come off some job. It was a performance capture job, and they had flown us. It was a huge game, like AAA company, the whole deal. They'd flown us to Vancouver for several days, amazing hotel, great food. It was like, oh my God, like this is awesome. And we did this whole like production, and the game never made it out.
Oh, really?
We only did a few sessions, but it was enough to sort of make the presentation of the game or whatever it would be. And it never, so I'm always like, and I've been in this business forever. I've been in this business a long time, since I was a teenager. And I just learned a few things. Number one, don't ever take it personally. You're going to be in fashion and out of fashion. It has little to do with your abilities. And number two, don't you count on nothing, and you save half of what you make because you're going to be in fashion and out of fashion, and what's supposed to be a big hit can flop, and what's supposed to not even be anything can be huge. You just don't know. And, and don't take yourself too seriously, right?
I think that's pretty
good. And when you're
good.
out of fashion, do your laundry.
For the love of God,
actually, you have to do it when you're in fashion too. It just is a lot harder.
How do your laundry and go get your teeth cleaned, because when you're back in fashion, it's busy.
How do you guys like cope with that though? Like that's kind of my question too with developers too, because developers, there's a lot of moving around and there's a lot of contract work. Like the stability is not there, and the secrecy, I would imagine, would be hard at times. Like how do you guys deal with that pace of this particular industry?
I will say developing my mental health game has been critical since I landed in LA years and years ago, because I started in Birmingham, and I went top of the game there because I worked hard. I would go door to door cold calling ad agencies and stuff and generating work. And I was still in my teens. I'd put on a little suit, put my hair in a bun. Then I went to Atlanta and busted it there and did, was blessed and did well. And then I moved to LA, and it was like I knew I'd be invisible and ground down to nothing. And that's what happened. And that was such a gift, because it really forced me to get my mental health game in order. And I realized a few very key things, which I'm launching this thing in June on Patreon that I will deal with the mental health part of living as an artist in there. But one of the key things was imagine your self-esteem is like this thermometer. The temperature will go up and down with whatever touches it. And if it's living outside yourself, your opinion of yourself lives out here. For anyone to touch, it's going to go up and down and up and down and up and down. You're going to lose your mind. You take that thing and you lock it into your heart, solid as a rock. No one touches it but you and your trusted people, and you value yourself and take care of yourself. And one of the other critical things for me was separating because if I believe all of life is creative. Cooking dinner is creative. Working in business is creative. As artists, we're at a particular level of creative. And when you're creating, that comes from the little kid part of you, that little child self. And you would never say to a 4-year-old, pay the rent, pay the mortgage. Come on, I expect you to get this together. You would never do that. And they would be like, it won't go well. So I just imagine being split into two people. There's the creative self that is responsible for just creating. And then there's the other me that adults. And I adult in all the ways, whether it's getting a day job, whether it's, doing whatever you have to do, managing your money, getting mental health support. And as actors, we're expected to live with our feelings here, right here, and I've shown up a couple times on Twitter, like, oh my God, you guys are great, because the heart, like Courtenay said, it's right here. It's out where the world can touch it. And it takes a lot of good, strong self-care to stay sane. And I think it starts with, honest to God, the keystone to the whole thing is accepting yourself exactly as you are right now, and learning how to deeply love and care for that being. That's your first job,
I love that.
My theory is not nearly as lovely as that one.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question because it's hard to follow that up.
I want to hear Court. I want to hear your
yeah,
too.
so I'll let Courtenay do it.
Yeah.
I grew up with not with a single mom and not much money at all. And so I learned from a really young age that like to make do. So when Jen says like save 50% of everything that you make, like that completely resonates with me. I remember watching the news as like a young adult and seeing the guys, I think it was like the Enron scandal, and all of these men who had lived in Connecticut with their like, 4 garage houses and their kids in college and, expensive colleges, and they were all freaking out. And I remember looking and being like, so there's no such thing as security.
No.
It's just an illusion that we all have, because if those guys think that they have security and they can lose their jobs and, for whatever they did. But nevertheless, if you can work in like high up in the corporate world and there isn't actually security for you, then I understand that for me, I am unemployed at the end of every single day.
Mm-hmm.
We work as day players. We do not get contracts for the most part for any long period of time. We might get a contract for a season or something on an animated series, but in games, we are generally day players. And so I know that when I come home at 6:00, that the hustle starts again. Like I've done the work and now the hustle is in the evening. And so I have 2 very distinct parts of me. There is the creative and the business. And sometimes the business part takes over the creative. So I have to be very careful about that. I really try not to wake up and think like I have in the middle of the night that, oh my God, like I'm unemployed and I could be unemployed forever. You have to have, I just have managed to try and trust myself. Know that, my thing is like cats like me, we land on our feet. And if you can really reinforce that with yourself and treat this acting, this artistry, it makes me a little bit crazy because so many artists I know and voice actors are like, this is magic money. When I get hired, it's like amazing. I don't know where the money comes from, and I'm just happy to have it. And I put it away somewhere, and I'm just so grateful when I get my next job. And I'm like, you have to treat this like a business. You have to track your money. You have to know what you're owed. You have to run this like a business, and you have to be able to take that creativity hat off and put on your business hat and treat it like you would if you were in corporate America, if you're a doctor or whatever. Doctors don't say like, hey, I guess we'll bill them. Like, should we?
I wish they would
okay.
sometimes, honestly.
I'm not sure don't.
I wish they maybe consider like, maybe not this time. I don't know, a freebie.
It's so important. It's so important to treat yourself and your business with respect and your art with respect, because, artists get kicked in the dirt a lot of times. And I mean, it's partially our fault because we come hat in hand all the time. And so if I can pass on something to everyone who wants to be an artist, to everyone really, be able to have both hats, because creativity and business go hand in hand. And also to take care of yourself. I remember so many friends of mine booking, a commercial. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory forever. And we would have people I worked with would book a commercial and they would quit on the spot. Yeah, a commercial. And I always remember just being like, you don't know, your commercial could get taken away. And so I actually ended up becoming the voice of Toyota, doing all the television commercials and radio commercials for Toyota for a year.
I know that. Yeah.
And they came to the Cheesecake Factory to let me know that I had made it through and that I was now the voice of Toyota. And they told me, and I was, covered in chocolate and strawberry cheesecake and stuff. And my manager was like, are you going to quit now or can you finish your shift? And I'm like, I'm not quitting. And I was like, can I just borrow the phone so I can go call my mom? And so I went and called my mom and I went back to my shift and I never quit. And sure enough,
you're still at the Cheesecake Factory today.
I am still at the Cheesecake Factory. I didn't stop waiting tables. I did not stop waiting tables until 6 years after that.
Wow.
I still have aprons in my garage in case this doesn't work out.
Oh, girl, I feel you. I remember I was doing Carmen Sandiego and I was working at Universal Studio, whatever that restaurant up there. And I won't give them advertising because the guy who owns them is not a nice man. And I remember just going back and forth between the cartoon world and we had an order for 64 episodes. And I was like, I could get replaced. I could get kicked out. I could, nope.
Yeah.
And I
don't live in fear, but also don't let your ass hang out in the wind, because it doesn't matter what you do. Just look at your life holistically and understand that sometimes things are out of your control, and you need to just, have a plan B, have a backup plan. Make sure that there are going to be bumps in the road. You're going to fall in and out of fashion, and do your laundry and be able to afford your laundry detergent.
I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, because I just want to add this too, because Courtney, you touched on it, which is that we don't, even when we're working, we don't have stability. I've got a beloved project right now. I just heard from friends, they're casting other roles, and like they won't even see us for our roles that we've been known for a long time. Somebody just wants to put their mark on it, and we don't even get to audition. And I'm like, what? First of all, you're going to piss off the fan base, and second, why are you leaving us on the table? You're missing out. But it's a you just have to, you got to be tough.
I do hope that this industry, it wasn't that long ago that we were, video games were poisoning kids' minds, and, there was all it was violence. And now exponentially, this industry has turned into where you see the wonderful things that can be accomplished through games, physical therapy, PTSD therapies, learning to work together, learning to be a community, empathy for people, being able to stand in other people's shoes, playing as female.
Accept who you are. This game is so much of that.
There's so many amazing things to this art, and it has not been accepted as an art form for up until I think recently, and hopefully we'll be able to see the voice actors and the developers and the writers and the people who slave on the campuses and stuff getting their due, and
podcast hosts.
Amen. Amen. Right.
This is fan hat. This is not asking if it's, if you guys are involved, but as a fan and as somebody that is in the community, as immersed in the community as you guys are, I'm kind of interested to hear where you guys both want to see the next game. Like, what do you guys want to see from it?
Man. I want Shepard back. 100%. I want to explore the relationships, with Garrus and Thane and Liara and all that. I would like for FemShep to be able to romance Tally, and I would like everybody to be able to romance Jack, and I would like...
Yeah, I'm right here, Jen. I'm right here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pimp you out.
Tally, hi, I'm right here. Top liver.
Coming to talk about you like you're, not here. I just want to jump back into this story in any capacity. I love it so much. And I also want to also be like Mark, and I want to be a weird alien that nobody knows it's me.
What alien was he?
Oh, he's a Vorcha. He's a bunch of stuff. He's so talented. Yeah.
Both remember the trivia we did on the podcast, and nobody, I felt bad because we did this. I had these 10 questions and nobody got a single one right. I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I thought I did good ones of ballots where it'd be easy, and everybody ended up hating me.
Well, what about you, Courtney? Do you want Jack to be the star of the show next time?
Oh, it's a I mean, I feel like they did a great job wrapping her up, but I also feel like there was so much that was unmined with her, and that, I would be stoked to go back in time with her. I would be stoked to go forward. I would bend time to revisit her. I think there's much left to be explored with Jack's storyline and where Jack could go. And I think that the problem with Mass Effect is that they gave you all of these amazing characters with really rich backstories and amazing, relationships with other people. And so life goes on. And so it's like, you're not like, okay, well, it just ends when she turns 37 or whatever, and that's the end of it. You want to see, I'd love to see prior things get more fleshed out. I'd love to see,
like Baby Shepherd.
Yes, baby, all of them, just like a box baby situation.
Baby Yoda,
like
it's baby Shepherd's time
exactly.
to shine.
Mass
Just,
Effect babies, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that you could make great stories with almost anybody in this game, and be like, I think these worlds have lots of sort of well-adjusted, cool cucumber women who are, naturally pretty and sort of, womanly, whatever that means, that fit certain standards. And I want to see punk rock princesses. I want to see, punk rock Disney. I want to see punk rock, in the, sense of being non-traditional women get the spotlight.
Yep.
Amen.
Awesome.
Amen.
Well, Jen and Courtney, we really appreciate you being on the show today. Thanks for your time. If people are interested in following you or kind of keep in touch or checking out further, how should they do that?
You can follow me on social media. On Twitter, my name is Courtenay Taylor, spelled Courtenay. If you go with the NEY spelling, you will have a different experience. Speaking of ladies in the clubs.
Have I been pronouncing it wrong this whole time?
No, it is pronounced Courtney, but it is spelled Courtenay, Enay. Twitter is Courtenay Taylor. Instagram and TikTok are Courtenay Taylor LA. Facebook is Courtenay Taylor News. And also I am on nerdsvote.com, which is my side project with beautiful, wonderful voice actors like Jen, who are our notable nerds. And we all promote nonpartisan voting efforts. So you can reach me on all the @nerdsvote social medias as well.
Mm-hmm. And on Twitter, I am @JHaleTweets. On Instagram, I am @JHaleGram, GRAM, not like the cracker. And I think I have a TikTok, but I don't know how to do it. And then
if you don't know it, they're not going to need to see it.
June
not
1st,
there, baby.
right. June 1st, I am launching a Patreon page. It'll be Patreon/Jennifer Hale. And I'm going to be on there talking for you guys. I've had my share of road rash in this world. I also grew up, not with much at all, and had my share of bumps. And I've done a lot of work along the way to heal and be stronger and better. And I love money and I love watching how it all works. And I'm here to take down the matrix. So that is a place where I share my experience and open up conversations with you guys, and we'll meet once a month and talk about life and stuff. And it's going to be launching June 1st. So it's Patreon/Jennifer Hale. So come hang out with me there.
And Jennifer Hale and I, along with 4 other amazing voice actresses, have started What the Vox. So you can find us on social media. What the Vox Talk, TOK, and What the Vox Gram. IG actually. We're getting together and starting to kind of generate a group of people that are lifting up voice actors and people who have been underrepresented, and just supporting each other in this journey, of sort of working the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats. And we are better together. So we'll talk more about that as it comes to fruition.
Yes.
Awesome. Sounds like a handy resource. Thanks for putting that together, guys. And thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies.
And thanks to everybody out there. Thank you all out there, you guys. This community is amazing.
Definitely. Thank you all out there for watching or listening to this episode of the GI Show. Please like and subscribe. Subscribe to our magazine if you can. And come back next week because we'll have another episode. Until then, everybody, game on.